iPad, but on your remotes. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Supervisor Locke with the invocation.
We are meeting tonight to conduct matters of importance. Guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought, and speech, so that we may reach a successful conclusion. Amen.
Amen. Supervisor Robel.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move for the approval of this evening's agenda.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Now is the time for the public to comment. If there's anybody from the public that would like to comment on anything on the agenda, now is your time to come up to the microphone and express your opinion. Is there anybody from the public that would like to express their opinion on anything on the agenda this evening? That portion of the meeting will be closed. Communications and petitions from the clerk.
We just have a couple of zoning petitions tonight. The first comes from Chris Schmid in the town of Nakaimai, requesting a zoning change from A2 to I1 for light industrial commercial use, referred to planning and zoning. And a petition from David J. Sweet in the town of Algoma, requesting a zoning change from R3 to R1 for a garage, referred to planning and zoning. And that's all.
Okay, thank you. Reports from committees, commissions, and boards. Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On Monday, May 11th, I attended a Winnebago County Emergency Management Department sponsored disaster assessment class in which municipal officials learned how to prepare for administrative duties involved in a disaster so that their community may qualify for state or federal assistance. If anyone were interested in learning more, they're welcome to contact me after the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Widener.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A month ago, I talked about the scholarship program, and I'd like to expand on that a little bit and talk about the winners. As you remember, this particular scholarship is set up for the students, senior students of the county of Winnebago. And it's basically it's based on the fact that these students have to write an essay that talks about if they were to be an officer or an elected person in Winnebago County, what would it be and why? And the scholarship is based strictly on the essay. The essay is sent over to the UW Fox for 3 professors, and they're completely blind as far as they are concerned. They have no idea as to who the person was or to what school it's coming from. This year, because we had 43 entrants, which I mentioned last month is a record, we elected to the Education and Extension Committee felt that we should go for a 10th scholarship in the event that 9 and 10 would be pretty close. It turned out that 9 and 10 were a virtual tie, so it worked out very well to give a 10th scholarship. The students that got the things, I do not know the names of them. They'll come out. They will be awarded in the June thing. But the recipients from the schools, Neenah had 1, Omro had 1, Oshkosh North had 1, Covenant Harbor Christian School, which is home school, had 1, and then Oshkosh West had 6. And you can remember that Oshkosh West had 14 entries in the thing, and as I mentioned last month, that was primarily because of Supervisor Kobe, who actually went and talked to the students, indicated to me a few minutes ago he was still getting phone calls at 9 and 10 o'clock at night asking questions about this. So I think Kobe did an excellent job with that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Norton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On your desk tonight is a pamphlet called Winnebago County Senior Friendly Activity Locations. And this is a byproduct of a group that I got together, Mark Wiesenthal from ADRC, Vicky Redland from Parks, and Emily Derringer from Rethink, along with someone from the Oshkosh Senior Center and the YMCA, because on every year for the last 22 years, Wednesday, May 27th, or on May 27th, is National Senior Health and Fitness Day. So I got this group together, and what we're starting the first time ever in Winnebago County is to have something like this. And one of the things that came out is this byproduct of senior-friendly activity locations. Now, also I should add and help promote the YMCA, both in Oshkosh, both at the downtown and at the 20th Street location, are having a number of activities for those ages 55 and older, ranging from a breakfast, a lunch, a seminar on running, and also giving free massages. I should mention that I believe in Neenah they're having something. This is the first annual one. We hope that next year we'll better coordinate things so that be better publicized for the whole county. So that's what came out of this, is Winnebago County senior-friendly activity locations, and there'll probably be, I know the Parks Department is planning on having an event in the fall when the walking path is completed, because in the fall it's Senior Fitness Month. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Schneider?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Recently, I was honored and privileged to be chosen as a delegate from Wisconsin to the Public Issues Leadership Development Conference in Washington, D.C. This took place from April 11th through the 15th. This conference brings more than 200 people together from all over the United States to strategize, learn, and ultimately to meet with our legislators. On Wednesday, April 15th, I met first with Senator Tammy Baldwin, and second then with Congressman Reed Ribble's staff. Our primary focus during those meetings was to ask our legislators to support the Smith-Lever Act line on the federal farm bill. Smith-Lever provides funds to cooperative extensions, and every federal dollar that's provided is leveraged by about $5.80 of state, county, and municipal funds. So it's very important. And also during my time with Congressman Ribble's staff, I also shared a message from some of my constituents in my district regarding his sponsorship and support of continuous glucose monitors for type 1 diabetics. Private insurance companies generally cover these, but Medicare does not, and they are quite a substantial investment. So Ribble's bill would mandate this coverage by Medicare. So I wanted to share that from my constituents. All in all, it was a really great experience, and I also wish to report that I was off the hill about an hour and a half before that guy landed his gyrocopter. So, thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Warnke?
I'd like to remind everybody that tomorrow evening at the Coghlan Center from 5 till 7 p.m., the Aviation Committee will be holding a meeting for public comments on the airport terminal building project. Everyone is invited to give their thoughts, and we will listen. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Lautenschläger?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the supervisors on the Human Services Board attended a 3-day conference in Stevens Point. It was a very good conference, a lot of good workshops. There was a presentation by so-called Dr. Humer, who encourages everybody just to take time out during the day and look at their coworkers and just start laughing at them. So it got the whole crowd going. Also, we heard from Secretary Kitty Rhodes on the budget issues for Department of Health Services, and Secretary from the Children and Family Services was there to talk about their budget cuts in there. Also at this convention, our own supervisor, Mr. Time Wagner, received an award for his dedication and his work on the Wisconsin County's Human Services association and helping in the restructuring from just a board system to a executive director. But Tom got an award because for all of his dedication and work in that for that association. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for Mr. Widener. I applaud the work that you and your committee have done over the last few years on the scholarship. It's a wonderful thing. I'd be very interested, and I know others would be, in actually reading the ones that were deemed significant enough to win the money. Is that a possibility?
I guess it's a possibility. I'm not sure we want to read 10 of them. We could maybe pick one or two out.
I'd like to read all of them.
Okay, you would like to read them yourself, or you'd like to have them read at the group?
No, I'd like to read them myself.
Okay, we can do that.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Approval of proceedings from April 21st, 2015 meeting.
Also moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any additions or corrections? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. County Executives Report.
There's several items on the agenda that I'm going to touch on briefly tonight. But before that, I want to talk about something that we haven't talked about enough, and that's that the county board and myself, with their support, of course, we've done some things over time to benefit the communities within the county that are somewhat unique. And I think we presume that everybody knows about those things, but having conversations with some of the mayors and some of the town chairmen, I think they really weren't aware that what we were doing was unique. And just very briefly, for instance, every year we give each community, or let the community designate, where some economic development dollars that we give them are applied. And we give $1 per capita to each of the communities within the county. That's somewhat unique. That's not common. Another thing that we've done that's uncommon is that when there was a federal mandate to switch to 800 megahertz radios, and it was supposed to improve interoperability, that whole program cost us, I think, somewhere near $11 million. Now, that's off the top of my head, so it's not an exact number. But one of the things we elected to do that I'm not aware any other counties have done is that we elected to buy radios for all the cities, all the towns, and the village of Winnebago, so that they would have these expensive radios so that they could, in fact, use the interoperable dispatch system. In every other county I know, the cost of those radios, and I think we're talking over $2 million, fell on those local communities. But I think we recognized that we were the only taxing body that could spread that cost over the entire county and provide those radios to the entire county. And that if we didn't do so, a number of communities would not have an adequate number of radios to actually be interoperable on the dispatch system. And I don't think, we've pounded our chest enough to take credit for that, because by doing that, that puts pressure on our tax levy and takes pressure off of theirs. It's also true that when we merged health departments, that the combined cost of an Oshkosh, Neenah, and county health department was significantly less than the sum of those parts added up separately. But something that the public may not realize is that shifted the cost of those health services off of those two cities' tax bill and onto the county tax bill for residents of those cities, so that it gives the appearance of our taxes going up and the city taxes going down as a result of that transaction. Now, in truth, it left everybody better off. And going forward, it put the county in the position of absorbing
any increased costs for those services, as well as bearing any decreased revenues from those services. And I think that's of genuine value to the communities that participated in that merger. But I think all of these things are things that are not widely known in the cities and townships in the village of Winneconne. Some of the items on the agenda that I want to talk about very briefly. You have a resolution before you with regard to the personal property tax and computer aid payments. That's not in the state budget, and I think I talked to you about this once before, but it is being circulated for support. Now, I'm hearing from several of our legislators that they're not ready to vote on that this year, so it may not be likely to occur this year, but the individuals that are supporting it and some of the organizations that are supporting it are very anxious to push it forward, and if not this year, next year. I think there are aspects of what they're saying that are true. It's a difficult tax. It's not a great tax. But it does bring in about $2.3 million to the county. And if that were repealed, we would either be out that revenue or we would have to shift that tax from the personal property base onto the real property base, essentially shifting it off of the business community and onto property owners that would include the business community. But in addition, the repeal of the computer aids, and you have to remember what the computer aids are. The state exempted computers from the personal property tax base some years ago. But they compensate the communities that lost that revenue by that exemption directly from general purpose revenue. If they repealed that, we would lose an additional $500,000 to our budget. And that could not be shifted to another tax base. So there's a real concern that we could lose $2.8 million in revenue to the county, or would lose $500,000 of revenue to the county and be forced to raise property taxes on real property. Either one of those would be very undesirable. So I would really encourage you to vote for this resolution. One state senator, a very new state senator, just this week announced that this was his highest priority to pass this. So don't consider that to be dead. The same is true on the resolution with regard to the nursing home reimbursements. We're still looking at a 0% increase in the nursing home reimbursement and a loss of about $62,000 for our acuity adjustment. We currently get additional money for residents that have severe medical needs, and that's being eliminated in this state budget. So we'll get reimbursed $62,000 less for those Medicaid residents than we had been in the past. And so that's still a very relevant resolution. You'll have a merit pay proposal before you tonight. That originates largely with the Personnel and Finance Committee. I think the department heads and the Human Resource Director put a lot of effort into crafting a solution that met most of the recommendations of the Personnel and Finance Committee, and I hope you'll give that serious consideration. You also have an item in your packet with regard to coroners' cremation fees, and this relates to a budget change as well. Joint Finances had approved a change where state reimbursements to funeral homes that handle the disposal of remains for indigent individuals, they're going to receive a smaller reimbursement for the state. But to compensate those nursing homes for the smaller reimbursement for the state is waiving all the county fees associated with burial of the indigent. So they generously are waiving all of our fees so that they can lower their reimbursements to nursing homes for handling indigent burials. That resolution also freezes our fees as of the passage of the budget for 2 years, and then only allows them to be moved with the rate of inflation thereafter. And that's why the Judiciary Committee, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's why I believe the Judiciary Committee and the coroner are asking you to increase those cremation fees before the passage of the budget because of the fear that we'll no longer have control of those fees going forward. This is a little larger increase than what I would have supported had we not been restricted on our ability to raise those fees in the future, and had we not lost significant revenues because of losing our fees with regard to indigent burials. And with that, I'll move on to the appointments. I'd like to reappoint Jim Kozakowski to Lakeland Long-Term Care District.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Carried.
And I'm reappointing Tina Bean and appointing Supervisor Robert Keller to the uncompleted term of Frank Frisetto. Thank you.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Signify by saying no. Passed.
Okay, and I have one more appointment. I'm reappointing County Board Member Tom Snyder to the Winnebago Library Board.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Neubauer has been taken ill, so he won't be here, and I think he's in the nursing home at the present time. But we'll give you an update on him as things go along. Supervisor Hardy had asked to be excused. On your desks tonight, there were 13 supervisors were given iPads to start how to use for county board use. There will be meetings on, I think this was with the iPads also, Thursday, May 27th between 9 and 10:30 a.m., Monday, June 1st, 5:30 to 7 p.m., Tuesday, June 9th, 1 to 2:30 p.m. These are just suggested at this time. If people can't make it, we'll make it accommodate how to use, when to have meetings, and we'll try to accommodate everybody with it. So we plan to start using them and giving a presentation in the June meeting. So, but you have them in front of you, so you can turn them on and start to work with them. You'll find that in the beginning it might be a little scary, but it's not. I mean, if I can do it, I think anybody can do it. But they're out there now. So there are different counties that use them 100% now. There will be paper copies right along until we get to know how to use it, so it'll be a learning process. That's all I have. At this time, I'd like to ask the Public Health Director to come up. There's been rumors going around that they're closing the North End office, and that's not the case, and he's going to be telling us what's happening.
Good evening, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yeah, just a quick update for you on the status of public health consolidation and the status of the offices that are up in the Neenah area. You may recall that the Winnebago County Health Department, prior to consolidation, had maintained 2 locations. One at the old Parkview Nursing Home, and one at the Neenah Human Services Building. We offered WIC services in both locations, and so really in the north end, the county offered just WIC services because there was a public health department for Neenah and Menasha already up there. When we consolidated with the city of Neenah in July of 2012, that resulted in the addition of a 3rd location for public health services, and that's the current site of Neenah City Hall, where the Neenah City Health Department provided its services from. That location's about a half mile away from the County Human Services Building up in Neenah, where we already had been providing services for quite a period of time. The goals of consolidation, if you recall back to this process, included staff reduction. We actually identified about a 20% reduction in staff from 3 fully staffed departments. We certainly identified cost savings. County Executive Harris already alluded to that. And it also provided for consistency in service delivery so that public health in Winnebago County, whether it was Oshkosh, Neenah, or in the towns, you would have access to the same services throughout the county. And it also enhanced our ability to work with partners, especially our hospitals and other responding partners within the community. So the intent is to combine those 2 offices that are a half mile apart and realize some efficiencies as a result of that. We have efficiency in support staffing. We don't need as much support staff to man 1 location as we do for 2. It offers a single location for service delivery. In other words, it actually accomplishes what the intent of consolidation was. If we have WIC clients that are being seen at the Neenah Human Services Building and they need an immunization or they need prenatal care coordination or some other service from public health, they don't have to go to a second location now to get that. Having people go to a secondary location, we often lose people in that process, and those services sometimes aren't delivered. We also have, by combining those offices, we have a reduction in costs for county costs for rent. We're currently paying the city of Neenah to lease the space within City Hall, and that money would stay within the county and not go out to the city. It enhances our ability to provide supervisory oversight of staff, having our supervisors only have to work with staff in 2 locations instead of 3. And this is something that's really been in the consideration or planning phases for the last couple of years. I did meet with Mayor Coffert ahead of providing notice for discontinuing our lease at Neenah City Hall. We explored other options first. Our goal was to combine public health with WIC. The mayor did offer additional space in City Hall so that we could, in fact, move the WIC services out of the Neenah Human Services Building and into Neenah City Hall. We were also offered use of the fire station on the south end of Neenah, west of Highway 41, as another potential location for us to provide those combined services within the city of Neenah. After consulting with the county executive and our facilities director, we really determined that the best option for us to move forward was to bring those services into the County Human Services Building and combine those staff at that location. Our current lease ends at the end of June, and we have a tentative move date of June 26th from Neenah City Hall to Neenah Human Services, with operations to resume as normal on June 29th. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doug and I talked over the past 3 months. I was getting some phone calls on this too, and I do have a couple of quick questions. By going to the Human Service Building, will we be cramped for service there?
The space that's been made available for us is sufficient for our staff and for the additional workstations that we need for staff that are working on the north end of the county. So in other words, but the short answer is yes, we have enough space. No, we're not overly cramped. I think that as time goes on and we experience how that flow works in that office, we're going to want to make some adjustments.
Okay, and the other thing is, I'm going to assume the county and the health department is going to give the same services at all times without any cuts.
Yeah, and I should have said that up front. I mean, our goal in those 2 locations is to have the same customer experience in both locations. Somebody walking in, for a immunization or a TB skin test or a license for a restaurant, or a radon test kit. I mean, they should have the same experience in both locations. And one of the other benefits of consolidation for county residents is that, if you live in the town of Menasha, you don't have to come down to Oshkosh anymore. You can just go over to Neenah and get that same service.
Thank you.
Supervisor Shirk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there's probably a difference of opinion about the intent of consolidation. As many of you know, I represented the city in discussions that led to the dissolution of the city of Neenah's health department. That was a tough decision, one that was not greeted with great anticipation by our health staff. And I think that the primary concern that I brought to the table was maintaining the same level of service. Now, I take Mr. Guerin's word that the same level of service will in fact be provided, because that was one of the major sticking points of discussion, was whether or not that could happen. Very closely related to that was the question that was just asked, and that's the room at the social services building. I've been assured, and I heard it again tonight, that there is more than enough space. That seems to be at odds with some employees that work in the city of Neenah in terms of whether or not there is adequate space in the building, unless the staff is reduced. No, I take your word again that that's not going to happen, that the staff is going to stay the same, therefore the services will remain the same. We moved out, what the proposal is to move out of City Hall, which has, within the last couple of years, had been totally remodeled to meet the needs of the health department. I am assuming that there will have to be some remodeling of the social services building to accommodate the moving in of a health staff. So there'll be an additional cost there. Residents of the city are used to coming to City Hall. Now they'll have to be retrained to go someplace else. And I have to be honest, Doug, that I'm concerned, as I repeated once before, that the supervisors were informed rather late. I met with Mayor Crawford and other supervisors from the area, and Mayor Crawford had been informed just previously to our meeting. My previous experience in public life has always been that the elected officials were not only informed ahead of time, but played an intimate role in the formulation of the policy and of the procedure, and that they were not simply informed after the fact as to what was going to happen. Now tonight we're told, here's the plan, which is already dated and ready to move. So I'm concerned about the whole process, to be very honest with you. If in fact the same level of service is maintained with the same number of employees, I understand that a receptionist can be moved down here because you don't need another one there. But I assume that the rest of the staff will stay there, and that the social services building will meet the needs of this new department, or revised department, without extensive remodeling, and I haven't heard a cost for that, then I suppose this can work. But overall, it's not what I felt we negotiated, and would not have recommended it to the council at that time if I had known what was going to happen. Thank you.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Guerin, the Judiciary Committee has been informed that the Veterans Office will be dislocated by the incoming public health service in the Neenah Human Services building. What can you speak to the dislocation of the Veterans Service Office and possible veterans' dissatisfaction when that office is generating 1/3 of the volume of applications for veteran service in Winnebago County.
I'm reluctant to speak on behalf of Joe, Wallach, the Director of Veteran Services. Perhaps Mark Harris would like to comment. I mean, I can tell you what I know.
Tell us what you know.
All right. The Veterans Service Office in Oshkosh has considerable space. There's only one person working in that office. We have worked together to assure that there will be space in the NINA Human Services Building for veterans to continue to conduct their business. And this will allow that space to be used much more efficiently.
I'd just like to further comment that this is kind of an additional perspective from that which the NINA supervisor presented, but it's the same symptoms.
Supervisor Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me. Doug, I just want you to assure, myself being on that board and some of the other ones are on the committee, that you can tell everyone in this room that there's going to be no deductions up there whatsoever. You don't plan to take anybody, share any staff or anything, because I hear a lot of talk from up there that there's going to be one way or another, and I don't want it to come back to me and say, well, you're on the health committee, how come you didn't know that? So if there's going to be any changes, I just assume you'd bring it out now.
Sure. I am confident in telling you that, our goal is to maintain equal levels of service, to maintain the current level of service unless we need to make an adjustment operationally for the entire department. So that would occur in both Oshkosh and NINA. Our programs evolve and change over time. We're half levy supported. The other half is fees, contracts, grants. Those all change every year. And so we need to make adjustments as a result of that. To the end of providing services consistently between both locations, absolutely. Operationally, I can't predict, what challenges we might face, what funding cuts we might have, and how staff may be best managed. We have sufficient staff up there. We're keeping all of the staff that are up there now. I can't make a promise that we'll never change that because we have change all the time. We have change in our Oshkosh office all the time. We have Oshkosh staff that, or staff that were formerly with Oshkosh, or formerly with the county, that work up in NINA. We have former city of NINA staff that, put a lot of hours in down at the Oshkosh office. So to the extent that services will be the same, absolutely. And we need to maintain a presence up there. We will maintain a presence up there. This move doesn't require any staff reduction to occur. And so from an operational standpoint, we may have to do some changes in the future, but it won't be at the cost of providing services to the public.
Supervisor Keel.
Hi, Mr. Guerin. I just want to say, too, that I had heard for a couple employees, too, that it is a little tight over there. I will, too, take your word that you have the capacity. And I don't doubt that a person in your position can't tell the future. You can't promise everything down the line. But what I do sense is that I got a couple calls from people, and I kind of felt funny. I'm not on that committee. I have due diligence and access to information. However, I really, I felt kind of funny that I didn't really know much about it and kind of did some speed studying on it. But having one of those rare times where it's happening right in my district with some folks, that's, I think, where I know you can't predict the future, but I feel like we have this little bit of time to talk to you, and I'm wondering that we want to have from you some transparency or saying, again, that's not an accusation, but I feel like I don't want to be surprised and have the ink kind of drying and moving out in a month the next time, something drops. And I don't have really a question other than
is there an extra, actually, one more question. Is there a retrofitting cost for any of the services that are moving from the city hall to the county building that have to be done?
Sure. To take your last point first, there are some adjustments that we're making currently or planning on currently. You know, we're running some new cable for network connections. We're creating some additional outlets that are on emergency backup power supply for our immunization refrigerators, things that we need to have on 24-hour power backup. Right. There's you know, there's a little bit of networking that needs to be done with that, so our temperature monitoring controls communicate with the network in the new location. We'll have to acquire a few desks for whatever furniture is not available there. We're really plugging into the office as it exists right now. Okay. You know, Veterans is taking some furniture, they're leaving other furniture. There isn't any, you know, no walls are being moved, that sort of thing is occurring at this time. I would anticipate that in the future, as we get a feel for how things work with that combined environment, that we would work with facilities to identify some ways to, you know, improve you know, the office layout so it fits the function better and we have increased efficiency. So I would expect that in the future at some point. But for right now, you know, we've identified, you know, where the staff can go, where they're going to fit, what equipment we need, and that's all. And that's been happening just over the last couple of weeks.
How much are you saving in rent once you move out of the city?
So our current lease agreement is between $16,000 and $17,000 a year. I do know that was going to be renegotiated if we stayed. I don't know what the terms of that would have been.
Okay. And just to reiterate, I guess it's just me saying this, that's the one thing I would worry about is the more vulnerable resident that would be inclined to take advantage of a service like that, that's able to get a ride in town or get a cheap cab in town. I don't want them to, you know, have a reduction where they might have to take that 15-mile cab or 12-mile cab, and that's my concern. So, you know, if they'd have to come down here someday. Oh. And I'm not, you know what I'm saying. That's kind of my worry in the future.
Yeah, we've maintained an office up in Neenah. I can't even tell you how long. I've been here over 11 years, and it was there long before that. And it's our intent to continue to offer services up there, and this just allows us to have a model that's much more like the model we already have here in Oshkosh, combined with public health and WIC up on the north end.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to ask the Highway Commissioner, Ernie Winters, to come up. He'll be giving us a presentation on Waukau Ave pulverizing and repaving project.
Evening, everybody. I put a little handout at all of your places. It's just a little outline of this potential project. I'd like to just walk you through it a little bit. Pertaining to Waukau Avenue, we're proposing to do a pulverize and repave project on Waukau. This spring, the Highway Department, as we do quite often, looked at that road and noticed it was had worsened quite a bit from the previous last couple of years. We noticed it in the activities of the farm show. It's in the spring. The frost is coming out of the ground. There's a lot of heavy trucking. It's getting in quite poor condition. The pavement is severely deteriorated. There's full depth cracking in a number of locations. Displacement of the surface is widespread in locations. There's a lot of rutting, and the ruts are getting quite deep, probably into the base material. This spring, when the frost was coming out, it was practically impassable in a couple of spots. It's important to note that Waukau Avenue is a county roadway. It's not a county highway. It's not certified county highway mileage. We do get a small amount of general transportation aids because it is a county road, but it's very minor. It's hardly worth mentioning. And a county board resolution was passed in 1988 taking jurisdiction of Po Beresme. So it is a county road. There are several jurisdictions that border the road. The city of Oshkosh and the towns of Nakaimai, Black Wolf, and Algoma are either touching the right-of-way or in the area. There are a number of private residents, which makes it function as a public road or street, but it does serve as a main point of entrance and access for EAA and the airport. What we're proposing to do is a full depth pulverizing, which basically destroys all the asphalt and will go down into the base materials, turns it into rubble. We shape that, we'll add some gravel to it, we'll shape it and compact it, and then pave over it with 4 to 5 inches of hot mix asphalt. This will be provide a useful life of 15 to 20 years. It should. It's like a new pavement when it's done like that. We've estimated this project at about $350,000. The existing conditions may require more work than we've anticipated. We don't know for sure once we get out there and really start digging and moving things how deep some of this goes. There may be nothing but poor soils underneath there. We aren't anticipating significantly more work, but I just want to mention we're not real sure what we're going to find when we get out there. This project will be brought forward on a county board floor as a resolution in June. I just want to mention that there's an interest in having this done this year prior to EAA. That would be a very tight time frame. We'd get approved for funding in theory if the county board approves of it in June, and we'd have probably less than 2 or 3 weeks to get this done before traffic would start moving for EAA. One possible solution to that would be to pulverize it, mix in some gravel, shape it up, and compact it tightly and let EAA folks run on it for a month or two, and that would actually help to compact it a little bit. Go back out, reshape it, and then pave it with the final asphalt. We may look at doing that. That's all I have. If anybody has any questions.
What's the cost?
We're estimating $350,000.
Okay. Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ernie came before P&F committee. We had a good discussion on this and some thoughts that I have, not against what he's doing here, but just some of the politics of this. As he said, it went back in the 1980s, and that was because the local governments wouldn't maintain that road because it was mostly used by EA at that time already, and it was given to the county. My years with the highway department, we dealt with that, tried to keep that road patched.
They're asking that you speak up into the mic more that they can't hear.
Okay. Again, my years with the highway department, we were constantly dealing with that road because there was no extra money to put into it. We kept it patched. But we did do some core samples out there one year, and it's not good underneath there. And I know Ernie's proposal here is the best that you can do with what you have there. I'm concerned that this is another type of thing like to bring up a bad subject, like the ice arena, putting expensive pavement over a poor base. The farm show this spring, again, like Ernie said, was the big culprit that really did it in. Farm show pays EAA rent. They collect all the money for that. What I'm saying about EAA is nothing against EAA. It's a fine organization, and I'm glad they're here, and I hope they stay. They haven't been asked to pay anything. I heard from a reliable source that they are surprised they haven't been asked to pay anything, and also that they've already gone out and gotten quotes on doing this project. So there's a disconnect here. You know, EAA deals with the airport. Ernie doesn't deal with EAA, but he's got the road. Airport doesn't do the road, so there's just a disconnect. This is no fault of anybody on staff, but I think that some dots need to be connected here and some conversations with EAA on what's going on, and also the local governments. One little update on the local governments there, it is just Oshkosh and Nakaimai on there. Algoma used to be, but that's all been annexed. But I know that I understand we're a few years away from EAA doing another, or redoing their lease. Somebody could correct me on that if that's not true. And negotiations are going to be started on that. I'm concerned that we're doing an expensive Band-Aid on this road again. And we don't know for sure if EA is going to stay. I'm sure, I would hope they would. I'm pretty confident they will. My feeling is that we need to talk to them, work through this lease agreement for the next set, and then do this road right, do a complete reconstruction of it if it warrants it at that time because of EAA. Again, it's just a poor base under there, and I just don't I think this is the right time to do that. And these conversations really need to take place with the EAA. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to hear Supervisor Rasmussen's comments because I heard him talk about this road project at the last Aviation Committee meeting, so I'm happy to hear his remarks, and that'll do my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I respect Joel's because he's worked out there many years and all this and that, and I respect Ernie very highly because of being in the position that he's in. But whatever we do with it, whether we do it now or next year, what happens like out in the townships and that, if they go ahead and wreck the road, they go ahead and fix it, and that's all we've got to do. But we do have to fix this road, whether it's now or next year. I agree, maybe we have to go through EAA, but if a farmer goes through, wrecks the road, you just have to get a hold of them and tell them. So I just think that this is something maybe we'll have to look back into, but I don't think this has got to stop a project completely and stay all that. But whatever you guys think, you're more professional at it than I am, but I think that's maybe something that we'll want to write into that, like was said by Joel there about with EAA or whatever, that if it's wrecked by them, then they fix it, whatever the completed project is. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Knitsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regard to Mr. Rasmussen's comment, is it possible that someone can dialogue with the EAA? Can we get that going? And also, while we've been talking here, Mr. Winter, you've been quiet on this, their comments. Could you make some comments to what they have said here? Thank you.
Sure. I agree with much of what Supervisor Rasmussen said. One thing he said is particularly true. It is politics and somewhat above my pay grade to try to compel a property owner to pay on a road where we have jurisdiction and we have, other than history, we really have no leverage to make them do that. If they're willing, it's wonderful, and we should probably have those discussions with them. I don't disagree with that at all. The second thing is the road won't hold together too much longer. It really is in tough shape. And just patching it again, as Joel could tell you, that simply is a Band-Aid. It won't hold together with patches. It needs to be redone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Their lease is coming up, and this will be discussed in the lease about payments and things like this. Zoning reports and ordinances. Report number 1, Douglas Doberstein and Julie Doberstein and Cynthia A. Cepek, Town of Vinland. Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for report number 1 on behalf of Julie Doberstein and Cynthia A. Cepek. Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. A mandatory ordinance. Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for the approval of amendatory ordinance number 5, rezoning R2 for parcel numbers identified on the documents. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Chairman, I think that should be mandatory ordinance number 1.
Yes, you're correct. Correct the record if you will. Thank you.
Thank you for the correction. Report number 2, Blanche M. Glotz. Supervisor Keller.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Chairman, I move for acceptance of report number 2. Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. A mandatory ordinance. Supervisor Keller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of
Second. Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, carried. Report number 3, multiple owners in the town of Clayton, Neenah, Nakai, Nipiescum, Utica, Vinland, and Winchester. There's a group of them, we'll take them all at once. Somebody want to make a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, carried. Report number 4, Winnebago County Planning and Zoning Committee, text amendment, the mandatory ordinance number 4, right? Or did we do that all together with that?
Together, that was there, and then you also have to do the ordinance on that. This is mandatory ordinance number 3. You gotta do them separate.
Okay, sorry, I missed that. A mandatory ordinance number 3. Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, carried. Now report number 4.
Make a motion to approve report number 4. Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, carried.
Move for the approval of mandatory ordinance number 4. Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve a mandatory ordinance number 4. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, carried. On these reports, I think that we should get the the name of the supervisor that represents them. I mean, it would be nice. A while back, we had him always on there, and I'd like to see him on there again. So, I know it says District 11 or District such and such, but it would be nice to have the name on it. Resolution number 16152 or 5/2015, commendation of Elizabeth Sawicki. Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of resolution number 161, 5/2015.
Been moved and seconded.
I have a statement here. While still an undergraduate at OW Oshkosh, I believe that's UW Oshkosh, Liz started as a clerk typist LTE with Winnebago County. She started regular part-time employment in June of 1984 on the mental health outreach staff, and on October 22nd, 1984, she became a full-time professional mental health case manager. She worked in the Neenah office when it operated out of the local radio station basement, then in a former convent building in Oshkosh, and finally at the Neenah Human Services Building. Liz has worked with over 200 different adults with severe and persistent mental illnesses over her career, showing commitment and dedication in providing comprehensive mental health services to a challenging population. Her devotion and organizational talents served as a positive model to many professionals both within and outside the department during her career. Please join me in expressing our gratitude for Liz's 30 years of service and best wishes for her future in retirement.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, carried. Resolution 162, 5/2015, commendation for Sandra Hartman.
Thank you. I move for approval for resolution number 162, 5/2015. Sandra Hartman worked for Winnebago County for 32 years, entirely with the district attorney's office. She started as a receptionist, moved on to become a legal secretary, and ended her career as a victim witness specialist. She always showed the quality of empathy and took every effort to explain the confusing criminal justice process to all. When she joined the victim witness unit, she became a passionate advocate for victims of crime. Her commitment, as well as her never-ending willingness to help individuals, is commendable and definitely appreciated. Please join me in expressing our gratitude for Sandy's 32 years of service and our wishes for her best in her retirement.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, carried. Resolution 163, 5/2015, commendation for Hazel Kaiser. Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you. I move for approval of resolution number 163, 5/2015. Hazel Kaiser started her employment with the Food and Nutrition Services Department at Parkview Health Center on February 2nd, 1981, and she retired 34 years later on March 9th, 2015. During her days as a cook for Parkview Health Center, She was a lively staple of the department who very much enjoyed her work, especially her interactions with the residents throughout the years. Hazel's dedication and passion are exemplary. We thank her for her service and wish her the best in retirement.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Carried. Resolution 164, 5/2015, approved lease extension with SBA Communication Corporation at Whitman Regional Airport. Supervisor Wernke.
I move for your approval of 164-52015.
Then moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Carried. Resolution 165/2015, approve the appropriation of $100,000 in funding to begin the design process for an intersection improvement at County Highway CB and Oak Ridge Road. Supervisor Robel.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move for the adoption of Resolution 165-52015.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify, Supervisor Roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I stated last month, and I haven't heard anything to change my mind, I cannot support this. We were told last month that we had a choice. We could either spend $100,000 to do a study, or we could spend $100,000 to put a controlled arterial there. I suggest we don't spend $100,000 for a study. I will be voting no. I urge you to do the same.
Thank you. Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had several concerns and questions during the presentation earlier as well, and didn't receive any information to support any of the questions that I had, either one way or the other. Did speak with somebody from the town of Neenah recently, and it's well understood that something needs to happen there. I guess I would not be in favor of supporting a study that would end up supporting a roundabout there. I generally have not seen a roundabout yet that I haven't had some amount of displeasure with. And most of them come from the DOT, and I don't think I would support one from the county board, just based on the way the DOT tends to chuck those at us. And but anyways, in regards to this intersection, I've driven it several times, even just this morning with the highway construction. CB is a very busy arterial, and I would support this money going towards a controlled intersection there with the stoplight. Just implement that device there to control the intersection, spend the money doing that instead of a study. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Sherp.
It was sometimes said that I never found an intersection that I didn't support a roundabout at. I actually have seen a couple that I wouldn't support a roundabout, but for the most part, I'm a strong advocate of roundabouts. If I'm right, if I'm understanding the resolution properly, it's not necessarily a study, but it says beginning the design process. And secondly, it seems to be saying that we can't get federal or state funding unless this intersection control evaluation is done. Are those two things accurate?
Ernie, you want to answer him?
In order to qualify for federal or state money to improve the intersection, and in the case of traffic signals, just purely signals, we may not have to do that. But in order to get safety money, we need to follow a process. And part of that process is called an ICE analysis, which is an intersection control evaluation. And the results of that analysis, I expect to yield a recommendation for a roundabout. And at that point then, as long as we were all in agreement, we would begin design of a roundabout improvement while trying to find money for the construction of the project. It's probably going to be probably $1.5 million to rebuild that as a large roundabout. There'd be some right-of-way we'd have to acquire. But we can't get there without following this process. if the decision is just simply put up traffic signals, stopping traffic on an arterial, which I think when we talked last month, probably isn't the best case scenario, but that is still an option, and it's possible that this analysis wouldn't yield a roundabout recommendation.
Supervisor Knitsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Winters has answered my question, because where I see here it says intersection improvement, I thought that would cover the roundabout and the stop and go lights. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Supervisor Rowe. The reason being is that I take that highway 4 to 6 times a week. And right now we have, I believe, 5 different stoplights from I gotta think what's called, Winnebago Avenue all the way to that last word by BB, all right? There's about 5 street lights and that's it. So one more isn't gonna hurt it, you know, because I've been told before this is supposed to be a traffic thoroughfare, yada, yada, yada. But if you already got 5 stoplights right now, one more is not gonna hurt. I would personally rather see a stoplight. That'll give me more feelings that there'll be less people getting hurt there. They still get hurt on a roundabout, so I support streetlights. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll vote by our little iPad. Supervisor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like roundabouts. A lot of people don't, especially a lot of people in my age group don't like them. And I have been a spokesman for years. My feeling is that when people of my age were taught to drive, it was you yield to the right. On a roundabout, you've got to forget that. You've got to yield to the left, and I think that's why people in my age group have difficulties. Having said that, I still support roundabouts. I don't support a roundabout in this location. I had thought, up until about 5 minutes ago, that we were talking about the possibility of a $100,000 regulated light there versus a $500,000 roundabout. Now I hear it's a $1.5 million roundabout. I would highly emphasize that I'd rather spend $100,000 than potentially spend $1.5 million. And it would have the same effect. Thank you.
Supervisor Knitsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Winter, correct me again. We could end up with a roundabout or lights. I know there's a preferred system here, but the improvement could be either way.
Correct. As I said, I expect the recommendation would be a roundabout. I don't know that for sure, and we won't until we go through an analysis.
Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaking of roundabouts, I think I'm in Mr. Rowe's age bracket somewhat. I love them, but that's not what I wanted to speak about. I believe that this is just going to be kind of a study and design, not, if we approve this, we're not approving a roundabout. I would expect that this design and study would come back again for some kind of approval, because I agree that over $1 million is a lot of money for that. But I also, like I said last month, it's a collector road and it's made to move traffic, and you really need to not put intersections on there if you can help it. Thank you.
Supervisor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know it's my 3rd time, but I promise to be brief. Supervisor Rasmussen, that's my point exactly. I can't justify spending $100,000 on a study when the results of the study might come back and say put a regulated arterial out there. Why don't we rather spend $100,000 on the regulated arterial and be done with it? Thank you.
Supervisor Keel.
That was my question. I want to know how much is a regulated light again? I think you mentioned it last month, Mr. Winters.
In the neighborhood of $50,000 to $100,000 to put a signal up.
Okay. Again, not have a love fest about roundabouts. I like them too. I understand them, but that is a lot of money.
Supervisor Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question in regards to the wording. I think Supervisor Shirk was referring to it when it says to begin the design process. So just to clarify, is this $100,000 just to make the determination as to whether or not you need lights versus a roundabout? Or is it also to make that determination and do part of the design of the project? I just want to be very clear on that, because if there's a potential dollar amount that will answer the question as to whether or not you use lights versus roundabout, that might be less than 100,000, and that's, I guess, the question I'm asking. That might be something that this board might be interested in considering. So I just wanted to make sure before we voted, I was clear as to whether the $100,000 is just simply to answer that question, or is it to answer the question and do some of the design?
It's to do the analysis and begin enough of the design, for instance, to 30%, let's say, in order to apply for grant funding to do the construction. It would not yield a final design of the roundabout.
Okay, so if I can ask a follow-up question
Sure.
then? Is there a way we can determine how much it would cost to do the part of the study that would help us determine whether or not a roundabout is needed versus lights? Because that's really the question that a lot of people are asking here. Supervisor Roy, it might not be all of it, but at least one of his concerns was spending $100,000 for something that potentially the remedy may be lights that may cost $100,000 or less. So the question is, if we could figure out how much it would cost just to answer that question, it would be useful for me at least, and I suspect it might be useful for some other board members.
I would expect that the intersection analysis would be maybe 20,000, 25,000. I guess my comment would be, rather than parceling this up, I'm not sure that's the best outcome of this resolution, is to amend it in that fashion. What I would prefer to do is go back and retool and look at this a little differently.
And to me, that makes sense, actually.
Refer
So
it
I'm
back.
going to make a motion to refer it back to committee. That'll allow you the opportunity to take a look at this and perhaps bring it back here in a different format.
Been moved and seconded to refer it back. Supervisor Wernke on referring it back.
No.
All in favor on referring it back signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? It's referred back.
Thank you.
Resolution 166-5/2015, authorize the Winnebago County Public Health Department to accept additional grant funding totaling $34,842 and appropriate the funds to grant program costs. Who's, huh? Who? Shiloh? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of resolution number 166-52015. Specifically, this is for accepting additional grant funding for the Heron Task Force, Maternal Child Health, and Radon programs that we have been administering previously.
Been moved and seconded. Seeing no questions, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Carried. Resolution 167-5/2015, authorize the Winnebago County Public Health Department to accept additional grant funds in the amount of $78,140 and apply the funds to program costs. Supervisor Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of resolution number 167-52015. Once again, this is for additional grant funding for similar programs that we have been administering, the hospital preparedness, prevention activities, and community health initiative. Thank you.
It's been moved and seconded. Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick question on these types of resolutions. Is this money already identified as revenue, say, in the 2015 budget?
Chuck?
No. It's not, okay. Are there any of these that come to the board that, no? These are all in
No.
addition to?
Yes.
Thank you.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Carried. Resolution 168, 5/2015. Opposed bill eliminating personal property tax and the elimination of computer aid payments to local governments. Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move approval of Resolution 168, 5/2015, and it reads that the reasons are there. Mr. Harris enunciated those, and so it's up to you.
Been moved and seconded. Supervisor Widener.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't really have a comment on the bill per se, but I remember Supervisor Rowe several months ago talked about a resolution that was really nice, and he basically just listed 4 or 5 items, and that was there. You look at this one, you got a full page of whereases, and some of them are the same thing. So I think we should take a look, and when we write a resolution like this, 4 or 5 items pretty much does it. I think people think the more whereases they put in, the more chances it's got to be approved. So I would like to see some of these resolutions be cut down to just a few basic facts and not a whereas the sun will rise in the morning. Thank you.
Supervisor Haig.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to this resolution, I understand that Mr. Harris wrote the resolution then? Is that accurate?
No, it was discussed I believe it was discussed at the legislative committee, and then the legislative committee brought it forward.
So in what form does it arrive to the legislative committee? And who drafts that?
John, can you help us? Or?
Well, it could be anybody that would draft it and propose it. Sometimes people ask me for help in drafting it, but it could be any of you that brings it forward that drafts it. And sometimes you have resolutions from the Wisconsin Counties Association or other counties that you bring forward that somebody in another county has drafted, or somebody with the Wisconsin Counties Association has drafted, who to me is unknown. So, like I said, it could be anybody that can draft this.
So in regards to resolution 168-52015, where did this originate? I just asked the question because I'm curious to know if anybody in this room called Representative Culp or Senator Tiffany and asked about the origination of whatever this is. You know, it passed the legislative committee 9-0. Somebody must have discussed this with somebody, and
If I remember right, I believe there was several legislatures there that weren't against it. I don't know, somebody else that was at the committee asked to speak up. I don't read, that's. Supervisor Eisen.
I believe it's on the agenda for the Wisconsin Counties Association, not favoring this.
so did anybody from the legislative committee speak with either Representative Culp or Senator Tiffany in regards to what this is, what form this is in right now, where this is at?
Not that I'm aware of.
Why are we voting on something then potentially that nobody in this room necessarily knows anything about? Am I the only one in this room who reached out to Representative Culp and Senator Tiffany and asked them what this was about, only to find out that these are topics of discussion that may or may not come up after the budget process, that Illinois and Minnesota no longer have a personal income tax, that this is a very antiquated tax which may or may not actually add up to what these numbers in this resolution state. I would ask that this resolution be pulled because we just don't know anything about what this is. And it's shocking to me that this would come out of a legislative committee with a 9-0 vote. Thank you.
Supervisor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick one. You may recall, all of us may recall, several discussions we've had in this county board about too many resolutions telling other legislative bodies what to do. A distinction had to be made between those which directly affect Winnebago County and those which simply express some individual's ideas. This and the next resolution directly affect Winnebago County, and therefore I believe it is proper to vote on them. I recall being one of the people who did not want to vote on things that didn't affect us, but I just want to be sure the distinction is there. This is county business and we should be voting on it.
Supervisor Olson.
Thank you. I contacted Representative Murphy's office and I wanted to get a full explanation of this and also a draft of anything that was not attached to this. He did send it to me, and his impression, and I talked to one of his staff members, their impression is that it's still in the introductory phase. It's not going to be introduced in this year's biennial budget, and right now it's just floating around the Capitol seeking signatures to take it to the floor. So that's where it is right now.
Thank you. Supervisor Gabbard.
I was aware of this because I live in the town of Oshkosh, and we got some documentation at some seminars that were put on for towns associations, plus we had our town booklet that we receive every month, that this was in there. If indeed this comes up, it is important to oppose it because it does affect the towns and the villages, and as our county executive said, and the county, you lose some revenue, which is very important to all these entities, but it isn't there yet. So I'm not sure why we're talking about this. I know there is one senator that is saying, my goal is to get this through, but you hear that all the time. So I'm not sure why it's coming before us at this time, because it is in the infancy stages. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Supervisor Rule. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Just thinking out loud, based on the question raised by Supervisor Haig, is it possible, or is it allowed, for rather than resolutions coming from the legislative group, this body, that they come from the executive branch of the county government? Food for thought. Thank you.
Supervisor Shirk.
I've seen a lot of resolutions that, or actions that came to the state legislature, and you'd get the notice on Monday that on Tuesday there was going to be a hearing at 10 a.m. So I think the timing is important, that you get out in front of it. I think County Executive Harris made the real critical points, is that, one, this is an attempt to shift the shaft to the local property taxpayer, and secondly, there's been a long history of discussion of eliminating the tax exemption on computers, going back, I think, into the 80s when they first took away that payment, and then they provided for the reimbursement to the cities. And so I think for us to get out in front and let legislators know where we stand on it is important. And if there's someone that thinks that we shouldn't do those two things, then I suppose you'd want to vote no.
Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to getting out in front of a bill or getting out in front of something that is physically in front of a legislative board, that might mean something different, but this is simply barely a draft even. I mean, even to call it a draft is perhaps a reach. Is this body going to become thought police at some point in time? At this time, I would make a motion to table this resolution indefinitely.
It's been moved and seconded to table this indefinitely. Mr. Bodnar, what, pardon?
Motion to lay on the table is not.
You gotta go up to the mic, they want you to talk in the mic.
Motion to lay on the table is not debatable, and it's not amendable, so it requires a majority vote.
He says it's not, the motion is just,
I have a question of procedure.
yes.
I believe that the motion should be a motion to postpone, not a motion to lay on the table. Lay on the table is typically, if you gotta go out and get some information, like that, the clerk would have to go downstairs and some, and we could lay it on the table until later in the conversation.
Well, you're not the one bringing the motion, Mr. White, Mr. Hague is, so you can make that suggestion to him, but it's ultimately up to Mr. Hague what he wants. I mean, you're not the person bringing the motion.
Point of order, the motion was to postpone indefinitely, not lay on the table.
I don't know, what was it, Mr. Hague? I heard lay on the table indefinitely.
It was postponed,
Well, I'm asking Mr. Hague, not you, sir.
Can we replay the?
You're the master of your own motion, not the other people in the room, so you need to indicate to the board.
I made a motion that was seconded. That's what I want this board to vote on.
Right, but what was it?
I'll have the clerk read it back to us. His motion was to table indefinitely.
Call for the question.
It's a majority vote whether it's postponed indefinitely or lay on the table. Right now, I'm, given what he said, it's lay on the table.
Okay. Supervisor Smith, I'm laying it on the table.
Never mind, it was on the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that that clearly has
No,
been.
I've been advised there's no discussion on it.
It's not debatable.
We'll vote all in favor of. We'll vote by our little iPad. If you want to lay it on the table, vote aye.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Non-debatable.
We'll vote by our iPad. Vote aye if you want to lay it on the table, no if you don't. There, we. That has failed. We're back on the floor again with it. Supervisor Eisen?
My point is passed.
Okay, now we'll vote on the original resolution, opposed bill eliminating personal property tax and elimination of computer aid payments to local governments. Vote aye if you approve, no if you disapprove. Pardon? I don't know the bill number, it's not listed here, but, huh? That is passed. Resolution number 169/5/2015, urge the Wisconsin legislature to seek rate increases, funding sources in order to avoid further Medicaid rate cuts to most nursing homes as proposed in the Senate Bill 21/2015 for the 2015-17 state biennial bill. Supervisor Wingren.
I move approval of Resolution 169/5/2015. I do have a question that maybe somebody could answer. People ask me, and I don't know, on line 24, 23, 24, why does it refer to the state transportation budget? Is that a misprint? Could someone tell me that?
Go ahead.
Morgan, you were...
Morgan?
That is a misprint, and when it went to legislative committee, that should have been corrected in the second month. So you saw it, and you reviewed it in April, and then in May, you saw it and reviewed it in March, and then you voted on it in April. Now it's May. But that was a misprint, and yes, it should have been corrected the second time around. If you're looking at an old copy, maybe that's what happened.
I admit I did not catch that until it was pointed out to me.
So it's supposed to read what? So it's supposed to read, what is the proper reading of it?
Just put a period there from the government.
The legislative committee should have had a corrected copy in April.
This is the one that we got for that legislative meeting. I checked it today and that was the language that was in there. So I don't know.
I didn't bring that folder with me.
I didn't bring a copy with me, I'm sorry.
So line 24, what's the proper reading of line 24?
The proper reading should be that we are requesting that you vote or you support, as the budget bill is drafted, it currently has no increase for nursing homes nor an acuity adjustment. So what that equates to is a cut in nursing home payments to most nursing homes in this state. To Parkview, it would be approximately $62,000 per year. So what you want to urge the legislature to do is to include a 2% increase to Medicaid rates and a 1.5% acuity adjustment.
Oh, then that's not what it said.
Supervisor Schneider.
I would move to send this back to committee to bring back when it's in its proper form. Right.
Okay.
I didn't bring my folder. I don't think you have to send it back. Just put a period at the end of it.
Chairman Albrecht, can I make a comment?
Sure.
If it is referred back to the committee, the legislature will have already taken up this issue in their budget debates. So at that point, it will be a moot issue.
Could I
Okay.
suggest that we take line 24 and just,
Well, first we have to withdraw the, we got that other motion on the floor.
I will
so somebody-
withdraw my motion if we
Okay.
can amend it right now so that it makes sense.
Okay, would you state on line 24 how you want it to read with the, not saying transportation again? No, I'm asking her for the correction. We're asking for the correction of what should be done.
Mr. Chairman, could I suggest that on line 24, we strike the word transportation?
It still doesn't make sense to me. You could write it to reduce the impact of cuts to nursing homes.
Just wait a minute. Supervisor Keel. Supervisor Farley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I suggest that the director of the department caucus with Supervisor Wingren and tell him what she wants him to introduce to the body. And in the interim, I'll request that we take a recess for 5 minutes.
I've got it, Mr. Chairman.
I'm on the floor.
Okay, we aren't going to take a recess yet, though. Supervisor Wingren on.
I've got it.
Okay.
I apologize for the problem. It should read, line 22, now therefore be it resolved by the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors that it hereby urges the Wisconsin legislature to seek. Now strike the rest of that on 23 and all of 24. And then after to seek, add 2% increase in Medicaid rate and 1.2% acuity adjustment.
I'll second the amendment.
So we add to seek 2% increase in Medicaid rate and 1.2% acuity adjustment.
Okay. Has everybody got that? Supervisor Eisen on his correction.
I oppose it. I'm just not going to comment.
Supervisor Skellinger.
I think the idea here is right. We want to make sure that our nursing homes continue to be well funded. I just also don't think that this was presented terribly well. I'm concerned that I guess I just don't feel like the whereases really apply as much to what this board is here to do. So I really do support this, and I really would encourage a resolution that is a little written a little tighter to come back. And I don't think it's absurd to think that this will still be an issue in a month. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll vote for it with our iPad. If you approve, vote aye. If you, this is to amend it to that. As amended.
As amended?
Would you?
No, you're approving the amendment. You're just approving the amendment.
We're approving the amendment right now, what Mr. Wingren wanted to do. Vote aye if you want to approve Mr. Wingren's amendment, or no if you don't. That is passed. Now on the original resolution as amended. Vote aye if you approve, no if you disapprove. We're voting on the amended part that Mr. Wingren added to this original resolution. No, we didn't. We voted on his recommendation
Whether or not to accept his
to accept his amendment.
We accepted his amendment. Can we have a discussion on the amended
Sure.
resolution?
Sure. No, we'll have, what would you, call in and I will call on you. We'll have a discussion on it.
Thank you. My only question is, it's tradition to ask, there was one negative vote. Can somebody on the committee, whether it was you or somebody else, tell us what the reason for the no vote?
Supervisor Eisen's raising his hand.
Yeah, I happened to vote against it, and the reason is because I don't think the 21st century county should be in the nursing home business.
Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious, in regards to this amendment, did we just make lemonade out of lemons here, or did we just make apples out of oranges? How are we supposed to show the public that we are providing them with resolutions that can come before the public in a timely manner? And we just changed this resolution to read almost something entirely different than when it hit this board. So I would urge this board, and besides that, who's read the budget? Who has read either the budget or the Fiscal Bureau report to verify that all the whereases in this resolution are accurate? I would urge everybody to abstain from voting on this. This is, it does not do the legislative committee a bit of justice to vote on this in the affirmative. Thank you.
Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, I watch Ion, Wisconsin a lot, and I think this body should be proud of what it's doing. In the legislature, they meet in secret and decide how are we going to connive to vote this way for something or against this. No, I'm speaking now. Here I am saying to the public, I screwed this up. Everybody knows that. And I fixed it. We fixed it right out in the open. We didn't take a timeout to go to the timeout booth. We talked it out. We fixed it. Unfortunately, I thought we were voting on the whole thing as amended the first time that passed. But we've got to take care of these people. My gosh. We vote yesterday we looked at $1 million salt shed, and that was terrific, but we can't take care of the frail elderly in our own county? That's disgusting. To say that right out loud, I think it's an abomination.
Supervisor Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and just so you people know, Bill and I didn't talk about this, but I wholeheartedly agree. I think and I feel it's my obligation or your obligation as a county board supervisor to take care of the people that need the help. And if we can, and I'll even use my own part for the parks. We spending a lot of money this year to do our parks, but it's for the people. It's not just for me or you, it's for the people. And I think that's our obligation, to try to help our people. And if we don't help them, who is? So I'm voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Knitsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Will the clerk please read how it's supposed to read now? Thank you.
Now therefore be it resolved by the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors that it hereby urges the Wisconsin Legislature to seek a 2% increase in the Medicaid rate and a 1.2% acuity adjustment.
And it ends right there.
And that ends it. Yep.
Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I happen to agree with two of my fellow supervisors and actually a third one. We shouldn't be in the nursing home business, but since we are, we need to do the best job we can. And I believe this resolution will work toward that. I had an opportunity over the weekend to talk with several of the legislators, and believe it or not, they pay attention to these resolutions that come out of the counties and show up on their desk when they're looking at these bills in their budget or proposed changes in rules and regulations. So if we want our legislators in Madison to pay attention to our constituents,
we need to bring resolutions forward. Sometimes they're clumsy, but the intent is there. Thank you.
Supervisor Keel.
I respectfully commend Supervisor Wingren. I respect what you're saying, but some of the, you made it sound like we're actually able right now to vote to do that which we want to happen, and it didn't match to me. We're kind of the equivalent right here of doing the safe thing. You can click like on Facebook, and then I can go home and say I did the right thing. I mean, what I should do then is get on the phone again with those people and spend some time doing it. And I think you do, and I think some others in here do. But I mean, the fact that you click vote for it, and then there I did my bit. It's funny. Get in there and go talk to some people on the phone as well. So I commend Mr. Wingren. And I think he does do that, but the rest, if you're just clicking and going home, then it's worth the paper it's on.
Supervisor Skellinger.
I feel like we're still kind of missing the point a little bit. We're asking for a 2% increase in Medicaid rates, Medicaid rate, and I'm going to take that part for a second and say that is tangentially related to the previous 20 lines about nursing homes, but there's this huge other chunk of that would be affected by the MA rate increase that isn't related to the functions of the county nor of nursing homes. So I still think we kind of have a resolution that doesn't match what we want to be saying. I think this board has made it clear on at least 2 occasions that it doesn't want the state to increase Medicaid as a whole, as a larger program, and so at least to me, as this reads, we would be asking for a 2% rate increase. So I just don't think that matches the intention of the resolution or what this board has an interest in. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One quick question. Where did these figures come from, the 2% increase in Medicaid and the 1.2% acuity adjustments? How did you come to those figures?
Currently, we're losing almost $65 per day on medical assistance. So the figures actually are still light in terms of getting us to a break-even point on medical assistance. Now, be that as it may, we still make up revenues through private pay and Medicare residents. But the point being is, if there is no rate increase in this budget or subsequent budgets, we are going to continue to fall behind what it costs to care for these people. So the advocacy is to increase the rate, and the acuity adjustment is essentially a function to keep up with inflation.
But where did you come up with the numbers?
The numbers are coming from the Counties Association and also a government and nonprofit nursing home trade association.
So they determined that this is what the number should be?
That's what they would recommend.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Thank you.
Supervisor Lautenschläger.
Morgan, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're looking for this money to basically come out of the current bed tax money. Is that right?
There is money that is generated from bed tax, nursing home bed tax, that is being quote unquote skimmed for other Medicaid programs. So there is money that is already being brought into the state that just could be used to fund this rate increase.
So we could use that money to
Correct.
to fund this rate. Thank you.
He brought up a good point. None of this would have come forward, but because the state has been skimming the money off the top that the federal government gives to the nursing homes is what the problem is, where it all comes from. I would hope that we would support it. Winnebago County's always been known to take care of our sick and our old. That's one of the things that we were known well for. We'll vote by our iPad. We'll vote aye if you approve, no if you disapprove. That is passed. I just would like to thank Morgan Hinckley. She's going to be leaving us, and she's probably sorry she came here tonight after all the hullabaloo over this resolution, but we're going to be missing a great department head. This one here will be, okay, we're going to take a 2-minute break.
The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. Please stay tuned for continued coverage. For broadcast times of local government meetings, check our website at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org. You're watching City Cable 10, your source for government programming in the Oshkosh area. Simulcast on 101.9 FM WOCT and streamed on the World Wide Web at oshkoshcommunitymedia.org.
See you later. They get paid for signing the death certificates. We don't charge for that. They make that up, so that's what this 350 and the 150 make 500. So all these people here are making more money on their cremations, and they're getting death certificates.
Resolution number 175, 2015. Request sheriff to read Declaration of Independence on courthouse steps on July 4th, 2015. Supervisor Winnebago.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move approval of Resolution 175, 2015. This first started in 2010. For those of you who are new, what we do is the sheriff, by the way, I did speak to him, and he has agreed to do this. He reads the Declaration of Independence from the courthouse steps as it was done back in the time of the passage. It's a really interesting ceremony. It takes about 10, 15 minutes. I know many of you attend, and we hope to spread the word so more people show up. It's a great way to start the day and to realize why we are, in fact, celebrating the July 4th holiday.
All in favor? Okay. What, did somebody move to second it? I didn't hear. It was moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Supervisor Shirk.
Yeah, I just had a question for clarification. Why does it say without further comment or speech?
Because we don't want someone to give a speech, we're concentrating just on the actual declaration.
So he can't say anything else?
You can say goodbye, have a nice day. You can head down to the parade then and do all your political speeches if you want, but not here.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Resolution 171-5/2015, adopt Winnebago County's merit pay plan. Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move for resolution number 171-5/2015.
Been moved and seconded. Supervisor Skellinger.
I just wanted to comment that I would have appreciated receiving the additional options for the merit pay from Mr. Collard earlier. I appreciate that we do have them, but it doesn't do us a whole lot of good when we get them just moments before we start talking about things. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Rasmussen.
Yeah, I'd like to speak on this a little bit based on the committee vote, no vote taken, just to explain that, because everybody asks about that, and this is a different one here. A motion was made on this the way it was written, but it failed for lack of a second. We had quite a discussion on all of this. A motion was made and seconded as an alternative, which actually matches the alternate number one that's on our desk tonight, and that was a 2-2 tie, so it did not pass. So that's why the original one was brought back in. I'll speak now as my opinion on this. If you read the resolution, if you all recall this, we talked 3 different meetings about this last fall and had quite a discussion on it, and it was passed by a significant vote to establish a merit pay plan. Now, the merit pay plan of this, HR and the group that he had of several department heads did a really good job on it. The part that I disagreed with is that it also has in there another across-the-board raise, which was, in my opinion, was defeated last fall when this resolution was put together. Alternate one takes just that part out of it. Now, backing up a little bit, the original one, the way it's written, puts if I'm wording this correctly, puts the tax levy increase the amount of levy increase that can go to wages into another across-the-board raise, and the merit pay plan is a small amount that is savings achieved in the payroll through employee turnover and a couple other little things like that. And when you look at what was put together with this performance evaluation plan and such, and it awards points to it, and they did a really good plan with that. Based on that's going to amount to nothing. It's not even hardly worth the time. We approved last fall to do a merit pay plan, and the amendment number 1 that was given to us tonight has that. It's for the merit pay plan, and it takes out the across-the-board raise. So with that, I'm going to make a motion to adopt alternate number 1 that was given to us, which is just taking the across-the-board raise out of this and puts the whole amount for employee raises into the merit pay plan.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt number 1 of the 3 options of the merit pay plan. He isn't amending it, he's saying that he wants the way I took it, that you want number 1. Correct?
No, he introduced the resolution and now he's amending it, correct?
Right. To follow alternate number 1.
Okay. Okay. Supervisor Fari on the amendment?
No, sir.
Supervisor Widener on the amendment.
Yes, I had two questions when we started out before this thing, and one of them was exactly why we had a across-the-board raise and a merit raise. And I support completely the alternate number one that Supervisor Rasmussen introduced.
Thank you. Supervisor Keel.
Just a point of information, is alternate like a legislative word, or do we mean alternative? I'm just wondering. Does it mean alternative? Or is alternate like a word in legislative speak I'm not aware of?
I guess I don't understand what.
Option, okay, it's very minor. I just want to make sure I understood it like that. It's an option.
Supervisor Olson.
Thank you. When I read this, I was kind of surprised too, because I thought the original purpose of this was to eliminate the across the board and go with a strict merit pay plan. This, as presented, does nothing of the sort. And you're still going to give people raises for maybe jobs that they don't, maybe you're going to give them raises they don't deserve. And you're going to have a little pool of money that's going to be dispersed based on someone's opinion that would get the merit pay. And that's just, it's not a correct way to do it. The original purpose was you reward people by the level and quality of their work, not by just showing up to work. So I agree with Mr. Rasmussen. I think we have to go with number one. Thank you.
Supervisor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I read the resolution, I see nothing in it to indicate specifically that there is an across-the-board component and a merit component, although that is pretty much understood by the explanations that come with the resolution. If we were to make the entire amount available on the basis of merit, and we will put it in this policy, we would be setting a policy that has to go every year until the board changes it. That would also make us, I think, unique among all public employers in the state. We are acting very rapidly in the face of the changed labor law. And virtually every contract that I know of usually winds up with an across-the-board and a merit part, if it has merit. The moment you give a merit raise to anyone without an across-the-board component, you are automatically, if my mathematics is correct, making sure that everybody else gets a cut, at least in purchasing power. For example, state legislature very often regulates us in the amount that we can give. They say you can't raise more than such and such. In fact, they've already made it cost of living. If you cannot give at least a small component for cost of living, you are actually reducing the real salaries of a great many people who are doing a good job. I think it would be far better to reject this resolution, and then each year when the salaries come up, if we know how much we can afford, we can make a decision whether it'll all be merit or whether it'll be a mixture of merit and across the board. But if we were to pass this amendment tonight, we would eliminate that decision-making possibility for the future. I think this is an unwise amendment because it ties us down when we have no idea what the financial amounts available will be in future years.
Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe Mr. Collar can answer a couple of questions. One, was there a pay study done at some point? If not, why not? If so, what did it say? And two, how does this affect a department where you have a person at the top of the scale and there isn't any place to go and the people under him are getting raises, but the top guy isn't because he's on a salary perhaps? I assume we have some people in the sheriff's department that are on salary, and the deputies can get the extra pay for working at EAA, let's say, and they get paid, the part of that overtime gets paid back to the county, where does that money go? All those questions.
Yes, first question, has there been a pay study done? The answer is no. We have not done a pay study yet at this point. We have a lot of issues in this county with our compensation plan that need to be addressed. And a major challenge has been to find a way to address them so that we can make some progress. And to do that, I felt we had to kind of carve up the big picture into smaller bites that we could address one at a time. And so actually I have presented to the Personnel and Finance Committee really at least a five-stage plan to address our compensation plan. And it wouldn't necessarily have been it's kind of arbitrary where you start. Just to pick one, the board kind of made that choice by saying we want to see a pay for performance plan in time to prepare the 2016 budget. So we put that at the top of the list. And that's something we felt, we certainly could use a consultant for, but that we also could do it in-house, and it might make sense to do a couple of steps in-house before we do a pay study with a consultant. So the overall plan is to first address the pay for performance plan, then second, to do again in-house a second project of reorganizing some of our pay rules. Who determines starting pay, what do you do if you move from one job to another, who gets overtime and who doesn't, those kind of rules. That would be the second stage that we could also do without the consultant. The third stage would be to reorganize our pay grades. We have, 17 or 19 different pay plans actually in the county, and they need to be consolidated and reorganized and look at how the pay ranges are. There we're getting into territory it really would be very useful to have a consultant. Usually when people talk about a pay study, though, they're talking about what I have outlined as the fourth stage, which is to actually go out and then look at how our pay ranges then compare to the market. So I think we have to get some things in order in our own house in order to make sure we wisely spend the money on the consultant. Instead of having the consultants kind of floundering around trying to address too many issues at once, try to get as much in order as we can first and then do the pay study and actually look at the market. So those are all kind of pieces of a moving puzzle. We talked about that with our group, and if the pay study puts us in a position where we might want to tinker with, step one, the pay for performance, we'd be glad to just come back and do that, but we have to start somewhere, and this is step one for us.
The issue about if you're at the top or you're a salaried employee, you don't get a raise.
And there are two issues. I mean, it's not so much a salaried versus hourly, because there are salaried people who are not at the maximum of their range, right? So there are hourly people who are at the top of their range. In fact, there are more hourly people who are at the top of the range than there are salaried people at the top, percentage-wise. So those are different things, and that's what we'd have to address by straightening out the pay ranges. Making sure there's enough of a gap between the range for supervisor and the range for the employees under that supervisor, for instance. That's something we have to look at carefully. But that's not addressed here, and this really wouldn't impact that one way or the other. But the effect it would have is on people who are at the maximum of their pay range. Different categories of employees have different pay ranges. We have 90-some different pay ranges in our various plans, which is too many, but they're there, and everyone has a maximum and a minimum in their pay range, and some people are at the maximum, some people are at the minimum, some are in between. So any pay for performance plan, any of the versions would essentially give pay increases just to people to move them toward the maximum. That's really the purpose, is that if you have a great employee who's just starting out and the steps have been frozen, there's no way for that great employee to move up toward the maximum of that pay range. So we want to provide some movement in that direction. I think that's the top priority of putting a plan like this in place. And of course, if someone is at the maximum, that rationale doesn't apply as much. So the plan as presented, without any amendments, would not provide for any merit pay increase for someone who's already at the maximum. The maximum means they've already reached the top where they're being paid the top dollar for that job. The assumption should be they're an exceptionally good employee at that point. The amendment that's currently on the floor also would not affect that. In other words, there would be no pay increase for someone who's already at the maximum, no merit pay increase. Under the amended version, however, there also would be no across the board if you're at the maximum, except that if we take out the across the board increases, there still is the issue of when do we change the minimums and maximums. And that can be done separately regardless of whether the amendment passes. So if the county board changes the maximum, it wouldn't automatically grant anyone a raise, but it would maybe provide some room so that someone who was at the maximum now could be eligible for a merit pay increase. So I know that's a little bit complicated, but the basic rule is if you're at the maximum, you could get any further increase, but you know, there may be a way to change the maximum.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have one question and then a comment on the amendment. My question is, how many of our 1,000 employees are affected by this merit program?
The merit
Because
pay
there are union contracts for protected service.
Right. The merit pay plan would apply to all regular employees except for those in the deputies union, the law enforcement union, who are protective, and for elected officials.
So it'd be about 800 of the 1,000, just in general numbers.
Pretty close to that, yes.
80%. Okay. The comment I have is that I oppose this amendment, alternative 1. I do support across the board. I would like to see the bonus of alternate 2 addressing what Supervisor Wingren brought to our attention, that the good performing employees who have reached their maximum under their pay range should be at least able to get a bonus equivalent to the merit amount. And I believe somewhere in that construction there should be a provision that the amount of money we put into the merit be equal to about 1.5% of our compensation pool, so that we know what kind of dollars we're dealing with when we go forward with this. We have about $50 million in compensation expense, and 1.5% of that would be about $750,000. With this $750,000 pool, we would know how to divide it up, although that's an issue to be further discussed. Thank you.
Supervisor Finn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I definitely want to keep across the board raises, or just across the board stuff, mainly because of the fact if we don't, I know some people disagree wholeheartedly, but there's a word called favoritism. And I just don't want to see that. Go with across the board along with the merit raise, I don't have a problem with at all. And if we're that low on the total poll on rates, then maybe we'd be better off to readjust our rates for our employees so we do keep them here instead of going elsewhere. I mean, it's kind of foolish to be tight on one end. You have a good employee who goes elsewhere because they have better benefits. So I don't know where I'm going with this, but I hate to see good employees leave for better pay, when if we paid better ourselves, we wouldn't have to worry about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Farley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe at this point during the discussion, I simply want to state my position clearly. I did not support this last fall. I do not support the merit pay plan concept. I think it's flawed. So therefore, I will not vote yes on any of these options. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Rule.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Along those lines, as long as you brought up last budget session in October, I did vote for this, and I will vote for this tonight. That's our prerogative. Last October, this body, with the exception of maybe one or two people, this group at least, voted to do exactly what Supervisor Rasmussen has introduced this evening. I don't want anybody in this room or listening or watching to think that this was something that was rushed into. I will publicly commend Mr. Collard for doing an excellent job in my opinion. He worked diligently and came to the P&F committee every month for the last 8 months and discussed this issue. We had a lot of discussion. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but at the last P&F meeting, the resolution that came forward this evening initially was discussed. Also, the amended resolution that Supervisor Rasmussen has introduced and we're talking about right now was introduced. And because of the 2-2 vote, it didn't pass. I will say, again, in my opinion, Mr. Collard has reached out, and I think it was at 1:35 yesterday afternoon, I got an email, as did the rest of the P&F committee, saying that he would go along with this alternate plan number 1. He's worked with a lot of department heads over the last 7 or 8 months. They have done an inordinate amount of work on this. To throw that down the drain and say, we're going to start over from scratch, I think would be a huge mistake. Once again, moving too fast, 8 months in my opinion is not moving too fast. In the view of most government agencies, that's probably warp speed. But 8 months talking about this month after month, and not only talking about it month after month, but in between those monthly P&F meetings, having meetings with department heads to fine-tune this. I can't even imagine the number of hours that were spent in coming up with the right system. There was a comment made about someone opposed this because they favored a straight across the board so that in future years you would know how much. Well, the county executive is going to come to us in October and he's going to know how many dollars we have. So whether we put it in a straight across the board or merit system, we're going to know the dollars that the county has to spend. We're just saying spend it in the right way. I guess that's the extent of my comments at this time, except I do fully support the efforts that have been put forth here. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Olson.
Thank you. I do also appreciate the effort that went into this, but government must be the only entity, in fact, it probably is the only entity that has everything upside down. We're talking about not being able to pay top performers because they've reached a certain level and there's nowhere else to pay them. Yet, it's okay to pay people what they deserve because they show up to work every day. That doesn't make any sense to me. You know, I mean, private industry would never put up with a program like that. So why should the government do this? It doesn't make any sense. Across the board, does not make any sense. You have to have a plan in place that rewards people who give maximum effort and penalizes people that don't. It happens all the time in private industry. There's no favoritism. If there is favoritism, there's a thing called arbitration, and you can do that. And I think it's time we have a little bit of initiative here and reconsider what we're doing and go to the merit pay plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on some of the comments, just want to comment on a few I've written down here that some have talked about. On the favoritism part, I think those of us on the committee have heard Mr. Collard's talks on that stuff and the categories he has in the performance evaluations, and I think they've addressed that. In fact, one of the categories actually rates the supervisory staff in these departments on their ability to do this. So that takes that out. Across-the-board raises typically reflect cost of living. So the question is, well, how do you get cost of living? In a plan like this, the categories go up by the cost of living, but your ability within that category goes up by merit. So nobody's going to lose money, and even the people at the top end, if the category goes up by cost of living, the people that are maxed out would still have an opportunity to get that percentage. So it's, I heard that if you give merit raises and somebody gets more than somebody else loses, nobody loses. I'll just use a hypothetical. Maybe the raise that's available is 2.5% like it was this past year. And again, hypothetical, maybe a poor employee gets no raise, satisfactory gets 1%, and you can go right up the line to an exceptional maybe gets 5%. Again, I'm just throwing out numbers there, but that's how that works. So people don't lose money on it unless you're a poor employee. As far as the comment about we need to retain our employees that they're just going to leave, what happens is the very good employees who don't get compensated well, those are the ones that end up leaving because they've got another job opportunity somewhere. This is how you retain the good employees, by rewarding them properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple questions for Mr. Collard, if I could.
Sure.
The comment was made that Winnebago County would be the first public entity to venture into a merit pay program. Is that accurate?
It's not accurate that we'd be the first county in a merit pay program, but I don't know of any other county that has done away with the across-the-board increases and relied solely on the merit pay. I can't verify for sure that all counties aren't, but I don't know of any.
The comment was made that by not providing an across-the-board increase, that would reduce the buying power of many individuals who are doing a great job. That's not true. Merit pay is to reward those employees who are doing a great job. Buying power may be reduced by some employees who are doing a less than satisfactory job, but would not affect the buying power of those individuals who are doing a great job. Another question for Mr. Collard. Do the employees of Winnebago County distrust their supervisors?
Some of them do, certainly. Most of them are a majority of them are used to a union environment where pay is lockstep and the supervisor has no control over their pay. And so that would be a very big change and would cause, I believe, a great deal of anxiety among many employees, certainly not all.
How do the department heads feel about this plan?
The department head, there are about 8 department heads besides myself on the work group, plus one manager who isn't actually a department head. And their attitude, I thought, was exceptionally constructive in working together to find the best possible plan. Even in that group, I think you probably have 10 different opinions about exactly the merits of the plan that's presented. I think they all want to do the best job possible if we are to have a plan. I can't honestly say I know how many department heads support the concept of merit pay as opposed to not having merit pay.
So in regards to the question about the employees trusting the department heads, then, is it your opinion, based on your experience and based on your involvement in organizing the merit pay plan, that the department heads could execute such a plan such that the employees would gain their trust in so executing a merit pay plan.
I do think that department heads and supervisors at Winnebago County would do their very best to implement this in a fair manner, and that if employees see that, it would gain trust over time among many employees.
So with that said, it would be your opinion that what you said would be fair and accurate in regards to the department heads?
Yes.
Okay. The comment was made that it's a fact that favoritism exists, that it's a fact that certain employees cannot trust their supervisors. I would offer that the only fact that's relevant in regards to that scenario is the fact that somebody didn't do a good job, didn't get a raise, and wanted to blame somebody for something they didn't do. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to call a point of order. I would like to ask you, Mr. Chairman, to consult with our corporation counsel to see if County Board Rule 7.6 is being considered or violated. The resolution indicates the committee vote to be no vote taken. Question I would like to inquire of is no vote taken equivalent to the rejection of the Personnel and Finance Committee consideration? Because Board Rule 7.6 says any committee of jurisdiction may submit to the county board a request which has been rejected by Personnel and Finance Committee. However, this request resolution must have a 2/3 vote, affirmative vote of the county board membership for adoption, except at the county board annual budget session. But my question would be, would the vote on this issue require a 2/3 majority because there's no vote taken at PNF, and if PNF rejects a vote, then it comes to the board floor with a 2/3 requirement?
My understanding, Mr. Eisen, is that it was not rejected by the Personnel and Finance Committee, that they did not take a vote on it. They asked that it be brought to the floor and for consideration by the whole board. So there's no rejection.
No vote taken is not equivalent to a rejection.
You got a lot of negatives there.
Committee vote says taken. It says no vote taken.
No vote taken is not the equivalent of a rejection. Rejection means, for example, that you voted on something and the vote was 0 to 5 against it. That's a rejection. My understanding, and I was not at the committee meeting, was that talking to Mr. Collard and talking to Mr. Rasmussen, that there wasn't a vote taken. There was no rejection of any specific plan.
Thank you.
It was asked to be sent to the board for discussion like we're doing right now. And as far as his 2/3 vote, this is for the 16 budget. This has nothing to do with us taking money out now. So would it still be a 2/3 vote?
No.
I mean, it shouldn't be. I mean, so he doesn't.
No, you're not.
I understand, but I'm just trying to answer his.
Yeah, you're not appropriating any money today. You're just voting on a plan. Right. You may decide when you get to the budget not to put any money in there at all.
I understand. Supervisor Turner.
I was just wondering, it looks like there's two alternative options here tonight.
Why are there two, and what is the second one?
Second one is another alternative or option, and that was not meant to be a term of art, by the way. Sorry for any confusion, but that was another issue presented to the Personnel and Finance Committee, and my sense was that one or more members would support it, so I thought it'd be best to have it available in case someone wanted to make that as a motion to amend as well. That alternative would allow for the bonuses for people at the maximum of their pay raise to be paid out of the same merit pool on the same basis. The bonus would be paid over the course of the year, but would not go to increase the employee's base pay.
And why can't these two be put into the same option?
They could. I think the board could adopt either both or neither of the proposed amendments, but no one has made the motion to amend to incorporate that second language yet.
Thank you.
Supervisor Thompson.
I'm concerned about what we're talking about. It seems to me so far the discussion has been on the resolution and alternative 1 and alternative 2 all at the same time. Is alternative 1 an amendment that has been moved?
Yes.
Or are the two alternatives together or an amendment?
Just
Okay.
one.
So then we should be talking about alternative 1 now and nothing else until alternative 1 is taken care of.
Right.
Okay, and I would simply like to emphasize, as we're talking about that, wouldn't it be far better for the board each year or each biennium, whichever, to be able to look at its resources, look at the labor market, and decide then how much is going to be across the board and how much is going to be merit, or if it's all going to be across the board, or if it's going to be all merit. But conditions change. We should not be tying ourselves down tonight to future decisions about how we're going to run this program. If we pass alternative 1, we've locked ourselves into it until such time as the board changes it. It would seem to me far wiser to reject alternative 1 and make the decisions as conditions warrant when the time comes. When we know our situation, we know how much money is available, we know whether people are getting behind or not, we can make an informed decision. But if we buy alternative 1, we're locking ourselves in. And I don't think that's appropriate.
Supervisor Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I struggle with alternate 1, and I'll tell you why. We're talking about a merit plan. We're talking about recognizing merit and increasing pay based on merit. But the way I see it with alternate 1 or alternative 1, when individuals get to the maximum of their pay range, there's nowhere for them to go unless we move the min and max. But we don't have anything in here that tells us exactly when we would potentially move those min and max. So those individuals who are at the maximum would be at the mercy of our decision as to when we are going to change those minimum and maximums. And I guess to me there's an inconsistency here, because if we say it's a merit plan and we're recognizing those individuals who are putting the best effort and producing and performing to the best level, and therefore their salary is rising fast, but then as it rises fast and gets to the point of the maximum range, we say, well, now, even though you're performing just as good, we don't see the same merit, and therefore you are not going to get an increase in your wage. I struggle with that, because we're basically tell them, go full steam ahead, we'll recognize your merit until you get to the maximum, but then once you're there, we're going to change our view as to what we view as merit. unless, of course, we change those minimum maximums on a regular basis. I would argue that there's one alternative that is on the table, and frankly, there's a fourth one that we haven't considered, alternative or alternate floor, which would be you could do an across the board, you could do a merit pay, and then for those who are at the maximum, you could do some form of bonus, like you're referring to in an alternate 2. So I guess the bottom line to me is alternate or alternative number 2, which is the merit and a bonus for those who are at the maximum, or potentially an alternative number 4, which would be some form of component of across the board merit and bonus, to me achieves that in one way or another. But if you stay with alternate 1, to me what you're saying is to potentially those you are recognizing either by being here for a long time and getting to that maximum, or by performing and outperforming their colleagues and then getting to that maximum quickly, you're all of a sudden saying that we have a merit plan, but it doesn't quite recognize you the same now because you're at the maximum. And to me, that's not the message we want to send. So that's why I struggle with 1. I think it has that component of merit, but it also stops it when you get to that maximum. So one way or another, to me, to really be consistent with it, we would have to look at number 2 or an alternative 4, or we would do number 1 and we would recognize that we have to change the minimum and maximums, or at least review them on a regular basis so that those who are at the maximum level understand that there'll be consideration for them. Thank you.
Supervisor Norton, did you want to talk, or did I forget to shut you? Supervisor Finch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I truly believe that there is no reason why we cannot have across-the-board raise and a merit raise. Because mainly, there's so many different jobs here for the county. Some jobs are a little bit more important than other jobs. So who decides who gets the better merit raise? So, I truly feel that, like I said, there's so many jobs that we should be able to give them all the raises, and then for the ones that really exceed, the merit raise. This way, everyone is at least getting something. So therefore, I'd like to move to send this back to committee for more stuff.
We got a motion on the floor already.
Yes.
But
I move to move it back to committee.
No, but there's a motion for taking number 1 first.
No, refer back. Supersedes the motion.
You can move it, send it back.
Second.
That's priority.
Boy, am I getting myself in trouble?
No.
John, you want to help us out here? What do you think of it? That he has to refer it back?
I never saw this.
Robert's rules.
What section, Paul? Because I'm not finding it right away.
I think it's actually in our
Refer
rules.
back. It's a higher ranking motion.
I'm asking you, where is it? Because I'm not seeing it here.
No, I'm looking at Robert's rules, new world, but I tell you what.
John, you got his mic, you can't hear it.
Paul, I'm not seeing it in Robert's rules that takes precedence. If you have a site that you can direct me to?
I was just looking for that card.
Basic information on motions, Wisconsin Counties Association. Main motion, amend. Commit or refer, it's a higher ranked motion.
I don't know what you got there. I'm asking you, where's the site in Robert's rules? Because you have a motion on the floor to amend already, so somebody else actually has the floor, and yeah, I know, but
If I were to call that the meeting be adjourned, that would be the highest.
Paul, I'm asking you a question. Where is it in Robert's rules? Not on your little card, but where is it in Robert's rules?
I have it on Robert's Rules of Order Simplified and Applied on page 79, where there's a subsidiary motions that are
Thanks a lot.
correct. And refer to the committee is higher than an amend.
Rule 12.1 in our books.
12.1? In your rules book, study book?
Okay.
Okay, your rules take precedence over Robert's Rules of Order, so that's in there. So the motion to refer would take precedence then.
Okay. Supervisor Ramos on referring it back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just say that I do support the refer back. I think it also gives the opportunity for an alternate four, frankly, which is
Okay.
that option that includes the across the board. So at least if this is going to be referred back, I'd ask the Director of Human Resources to consider that.
It was. Supervisor Rowe on referring it back.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. As I previously stated, a lot of work has gone into this for 8 months. Hours of work by the director, by the P&M committee, by department heads. So I would only refresh everyone's memory that doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. You can refer it back, but I would suggest you don't. Thank you.
Supervisor Widener on referring it back.
Yes.
Well, didn't he, I think you, huh?
He just seconded Jerry's motion, he didn't speak.
Supervisor Widener.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the referring it back at a point like this is just a stall. Apparently it's a thing, you send it back and hope that it doesn't come back again. It doesn't refer to anything. Supervisor Rose said we spent months and months on this. It's already been reported by Supervisor Rasmussen that the committee spent a lot of time on this. It came up with a no vote, or I won't say a no vote. Yes, I'm sorry. And so doing this is just a waste of time. All we're trying to do here is to come to a conclusion as to whether it's a good plan or not. And by someone saying that they're probably losing the vote and they just want to send it back and hope it never comes back again, is not going to work. So I think let's defeat this, move on with this amendment, and then probably move on with the second amendment before we get done tonight. Thank you.
Supervisor Eisen on referring it back.
Thank you. Yes, sir. I support referring it back because we received this resolution from the Personnel Finance Committee, which refused to do its job, and it passed the buck on to the county board. Now, if we send this back to the Personnel and Finance Committee and ask them to give us a committee vote, then we'll know where they stand. They should be hitting out the nitty-gritty of whether there should be a cost of living, whether there should be a merit on top of it, whether there should be a bonus for those who've reached the maximum. That's where this conversation should be taken up. And it's unfortunate that Supervisor Vice Chair Rowe was not at that meeting, because I'm certain if he was there, they would have had a vote.
Supervisor Rasmussen, I'm referring it back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's important to realize that the HR department needs to know on this. I mean, this was the month that they said they needed to know. We refer it back, it just gets delayed again. They've got to implement things before budget season. And I want to repeat what Supervisor Widener said. What I heard here in this whole process now in this latest one was, if I don't like a resolution that's on the floor, I can just make a motion to refer it back to committee, and that takes precedent. That could happen at every motion we have by someone who's against it. I believe that the way we resolve this is we vote on it, not refer it back to committee. Thank you.
Supervisor Hagan, referring it back.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I agree with Supervisor Widener that to refer this back to committee is nothing more than a political stall tactic by those members of this board who want no part of a merit pay program, whether it's this month, next month, or 5 years from now. They will not want a merit pay program, period. Number two, to declare that Personnel and Finance did not do its due diligence and did not turn over every rock, that Mr. Collard didn't fully participate in this process and educate to the best of his ability, and that those committee members did not glean on that experience and knowledge, I would consider to be completely asinine. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Thompson.
I find myself in the relatively odd position of agreeing with a number of people who have recently spoken about referring it back to the committee. I also oppose bringing it back to the committee, but I'd like to point out for everybody that I have this odd notion that what we are considering right now is alternative one. That is the motion on the floor. It cannot be referred back to a committee because it's never been there. Alternative one has never been in the committee. We should not be referring anything back to any committee at this point, but until there is a vote taken on alternative one is the only legitimate topic of discussion. I brought that up a little while ago, and the discussion immediately went to alternative two. Am I correct in saying alternative one is the only thing on the floor right now?
Yes.
Was there a motion for alternative one? I don't know.
Yes, it was seconded.
Yes. Okay, so alternative one is the only legitimate topic of conversation at the moment.
We've never voted on it yet.
I'm sorry, John, I cannot understand what you're saying.
No, you have a motion to refer to committee that takes precedence right now. That's what's on the floor right now. You have a motion to
was to send
refer.
it back to the committee.
Yes.
It's never been there.
No, the whole resolution, the motion is to refer the whole resolution back to the committee.
Okay, then I will repeat my statement. Nothing here should go back to the committee, because the committee has worked very, very hard. And I think the legitimate topic of discussion now, until it is taken care of, is alternative one, because that's what was moved. And don't talk about alternative two or the resolution, or the big resolution, because that hasn't come up yet.
Supervisor Rule.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would be remiss if I didn't comment and take extreme exception to the comment that, quote, PNF refused to do its job. We bent over backwards. We looked under every rock. We tried to do the best we could. what we wound up with was, let's bring it to the board and see what people have to say. What I'm hearing is that last October, this passed. We were gonna do this. It didn't pass unanimously, but what we're hearing tonight is the opposition from the people that voted no last October that are voting no again tonight, and it appears as though they're trying to go to any extent to kill this thing. I say no. Please, I urge you to vote no to referring this back. Thank you.
Supervisor Schier.
I've always supported some form of merit pay, and I did that at the city of Neenah as well. But as I read this, if in fact it went back to committee and they passed alternative one, wouldn't employees at the maximum not receive any additional merit pay?
Right.
Since that's part of the original resolution and that's not referred to in alternative one at all.
Mike, you want to answer him? Mr. Collier?
The original plan, if it's amended according to alternative one, would still not provide a pay increase to those at the maximum. That's correct.
Okay.
Supervisor Rowe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I had a note written here when a supervisor said he struggled with that situation. My response to that, to handle the people that are at the max, is to adjust the ranges. For 45 years in private industry, when you have that situation, you adjust the low and the high. So if we've got that many people that are at the high, we must be doing, I don't want to say anything wrong, but it's time to make an adjustment. So you move the ranges. You move the ranges, and the people that are doing a good job and we're at the max now have some room to continue to move up. Thank you.
Okay, we'll vote by our iPad. You're voting to refer it back. You vote aye if you want to refer it back, or you vote no. Like Mr. Rose says, there was a lot of hard work done into this already. She's gone. Who? We're back to the original. Okay, seeing there are no lights on, we'll vote back. We'll vote either you'll want to vote for number one.
The motion to amend.
To amend to number one.
Say it again, please.
You're voting on number one you're voting on number one.
No, to amend it to number one.
Right, to amend it to number one. But I mean, there was,
To amend it to number one.
right.
Just confirm.
Hey, George, I'll vote for you.
We'll just record this vote, okay. It's not looking to show it. Okay, now it's, okay.
That is passed.
Now you have to vote on it, okay.
Okay, now we vote on it as amended? Now we'll vote on it again as amended. Supervisor Widener.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add a second amendment. I would like to do alternate 2, which I'll read, would give those employees who are already at the maximum of their pay range merit pay in the form of a bonus.
Second. Where did you want to put that?
Was there a second?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Widener, Kobe seconded it.
Okay.
He wants to amend it to give a bonus. Would you state it back again for?
Certainly.
Is it in the resolution or in the?
It would give those employees who are already at the maximum of their pay raise merit pay in the form of a bonus.
Where do you want that, where do you want that added, Tom?
It would be the second amendment to the main motion.
Okay, yeah, further resolve?
It could have been amended at the time of the amendment, but I did not do that.
Supervisor Haig?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just considering some of the earlier comments from the Human Resources Director, it sounds like our pay program throughout the county is very scattered and unfocused the way it is, and I think that the way Alternative 1 is positioned is to help focus that pay plan. And in regards to those who are at the high end of the pay structure, it makes more sense to do, as Mr. Rowe suggested earlier, that when that happens, that we address that pay structure and keep everything uniform, and not make things as convoluted as, I'm not suggesting, Mr. Widener, that your amendment is convoluted in itself, but I think that it would only add to what Mr. Collard spoke of earlier, that there are a lot of different mechanisms and things going on here, and that streamlining and focusing what he has to deal with might be the recipe of the day. So I would urge a vote against that amendment.
Supervisor Rowe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I would agree with what was just said and what I said earlier. It would make a lot more sense just for Mike to do what he has to do and come to us and adjust the ranges rather than do this. My concern, the first thought I had was, if I understand the wording that you came up with, was if people are at the max, give them a bonus. What if they're not performing? How much of a bonus are you going to give them? So I would urge you to vote no.
Supervisor Keel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that this was just kind of going off. A sudden amendment like that is confusing, and that you've all said that same thing. So I'd urge to vote no against that second amendment. I mean, not against the second amendment, but against this second amendment.
Supervisor Rasmussen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We talked about this subject at length at committee, and we struggled with this one. What we have is, we have people that are at the top right now that have gotten their through merit, and they certainly deserve some kind of bonus. But we also have a lot of people in the system we're at now that got to the top because they got automatic step raises and just got there. And like Supervisor Rose said, how do you distinguish that? I mean, I understand the conflict in this because of those people that are at that top level because of merit. But, you know, I've talked to people about this. Somebody I know very well deals with this a lot. And the answer is the top range is set because that's what the job is worth. And if you reach the top, you're doing the best. And that's where it is. As a personal note, back 10 years ago when we had the little bit of merit pay, I was one of those. I was, the last year we had that, my department had said, oh, you got the top rating. The bad news is you're at the top, you don't get a raise. So I accepted it, just the way it is. Thank you.
Supervisor Widener?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the problem is we sit here and talk about we'll change the ranges. When are we going to change the range? Are we going to change the range when someone gets a merit increase that puts him over the top? Are we going to do it ahead of time in anticipation? I think we're sitting back and saying we're not going to do a bonus situation. The purpose of bonus is you don't change his level. That's done in other agencies right now. The problem if someone makes a comment, said, where did this come from, this amendment? It's right on the sheet that most of us could have read. You know, so it's not a sudden amendment, and it probably should have been discussed as part of the whole thing. But I think you got to sit back and think, what is the purpose of this? If you're doing right now, and the guy's at his top, and you're saying you do a really good job, as Supervisor Rasmussen has said, the bad news is you don't get a raise. And you won't get a raise until you get to the point where you change the levels. And you don't change the levels when you're getting raises. You change them ahead of time. So I urge you to think about this a little bit and think about the people that are at the top, because what you're saying right now is if you change the raise, if you change the level, pretty soon you're at the top of that level. Then if you do a good job, once again, we're really happy you did a good job, but you don't get a raise. So thinking back as to what we're trying to do here is we're saying the people that are at the top of their level and do a good job will get some kind of recommendation, some kind of increase. And a bonus is a good way to do that because you're not changing the levels and having people move over the top of the thing. So I urge you people to think about what you're doing and not just do a knee jerk and saying, gee, it's late in the evening, it was kind of a sudden amendment, let's don't do that. Think about the whole reason why we did the first thing with a merit increase is the merit increase is for all people and not just for people that are down at the bottom of the level. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Skellinger?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support this amendment. I want to read from Section 1, Paragraph A, the very first line of the merit pay. This merit pay plan is designed to motivate employees to develop and contribute to the best of their ability. I don't know how we're going to motivate people if it's not financially. If there's something I missed, please let me know. And I also want to note that the proposed in our late addendum proposal amendments, whatever, it has an allocation of merit pool for the bonuses, and the shares are substantially smaller than what they would be for folks who are not at the top of their pay scale. Looks like something about 60% per income and score breakdown. So I think this is a good one. I think this is how we're going to continue to take that very first line and motivate folks. And I don't think that it's such a substantial amount of shares that it's going to create an imbalance. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Ramos?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am in support of the amendment, but I want to give a little bit more context to it. I truly wish we would have referred this back, and I'll give you a little background as to why. And certainly it wasn't a stall tactic on my part. I actually voted for this last fall as a merit plan, but the devil really truly always is in the detail. So when we approved it in the fall, that was a merit plan in concept. Now we're talking about the actual boots on the ground, what the merit plan would look like. So it's very important that we try to get it right. And we have to put it in context and recognize that option 1 and 2, we're talking about 1, effectively this amendment is option number 2, we just got tonight. Now I recognize that the committee did its due diligence and looked at these different alternatives, but this county board just received those 2 options, 1 and 2, just tonight. And we're talking about a merit plan that will affect 800 employees. So when we're looking at the amendment that he's referring to, which is effectively, from what I can tell, is once again alternate number 2, I can see some value in it. And please correct me if I'm wrong when I compare alternate number 2 versus alternate number 1. But the way I read the language is, there is a time period in which these evaluations are reviewed with the employees. And that goes all the way up to October 31st. So if we're going to work with the idea that we can simply change the minimum and maximum, I don't see how we can change the minimum and maximum to affect that employee at the maximum for the upcoming year when these numbers are ultimately determined, because they have up until October 31st to put these evaluations in, but we as a county board adopt the budget the week right afterward or the week that of, and all the information that is provided to develop that budget long before is included before that. So we cannot make a determination as to whether or not we're going to change the minimum max when they have right until the time in which we adopt the budget to actually provide those evaluations. So no matter how you look at it, unless I'm reading it wrong, those individuals at the maximum, those who in many ways you would be arguing for a merit plan to reward them for that effort, really won't get it at least for that year. And then even then, I would argue they're at the mercy of us to determine whether or not we change the minimum and maximums for the upcoming year. So that is why I think the devil's in the detail with a type of plan like this. That's why I was hoping to refer back, not for me for a stall tactic, but to try to get it at least the best we possibly can for the 800 employees that this is going to affect. So we didn't refer it back. I'll support alternate number 2 because I think it brings us much closer to what we're trying to do with a merit plan. So I'd urge you to support it. It really is effectively alternate number 2 that Director Collard actually put forward this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Earlier, I think it was this evening or yesterday, somebody asked about the wage study. Once the wage study is done, we'll be able to move those ranges. Everything doesn't happen immediately. As we talked about all night, it took us 8 months to get to this point. The wage study is going to take some time. It'll all fit together, but it takes time. Is it a perfect science? Ask Mr. Collard, he'll tell you no, it's not a perfect science. Step at a time, we're doing the best that we can. Somebody mentioned money. Being at the max and not getting a raise. Well, what kind of a motivator is that? I would suggest to you that good employees do not only look at money as a motivator. There are many other things that go into employment. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate your vote no.
Supervisor Turner.
Just to answer one of Mr. Rowe's questions earlier, he says, how do you decide, what kind of a bonus do you give people? Well, what you do is if you have 2 people that are at the maximum, and one's a great employee and one's a good employee, the great employee is going to get a 3% increase, which would be actually a bonus. The good employee would maybe get a 2% increase, which would be their bonus. So therefore, 2 people at the max are not getting, they're still getting paid an increase, but they get paid a different increase or a different bonus depending on their performance. So you can do it that way.
Supervisor Warnke.
I urge you to vote against this bonus thing. For one thing, what we're doing is we're giving like a blank check. And Supervisor Rowe's you know, we gotta do this a little bit at a time. You can't just say we're gonna give a bonus. You know, we don't know where the money situation is. We have to look at it when the time comes, and this is one step that we have to take down the line. So I would say, please vote against this, and we'll look at it in a different way, or a more educated way.
Okay, we'll vote on our little iPad. Well, first I'll have the clerk read back what's going on. She's gonna tell you.
Supervisor Widener's amendment, be it further resolved that employees at the maximum pay range shall receive a raise in the form of a bonus.
Maybe you said it this way. Who are already at the maximum of their pay raise, merit pay in the form of bonus. Is that what you said?
I did not. So merit pay in.
Right.
So shall
in
receive.
effect, we're saying because it's at the top of the level, we can't give them additional monies because that would change their level of pay. But we can give them a bonus which would be equal to what they would have gotten if they were not at the top. The bonus would be the equivalent of the merit raise.
Okay. So merit pay in the form of a bonus.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, that's what we're voting on. Supervisor Ramos, did you have your light on before we decided to vote? Or?
I did. I just felt it was important to make sure we understood that it wouldn't be a blank check, that all of these resolutions include the provision that there's a certain amount of money that's determined by the county executive and this county board, that then simply this merit plan would administer how much that would be. So no matter which plan you're talking about the exact same amount of money every year. So there would be no blank check in regards to a bonus. And it would simply be an administration of the same increase. It's just that they're at the maximum, as is well worded in alternate 2. So I just felt that needed to be clarified. Thank you.
Okay. Vote aye if you approve, no if you disapprove. That is passed. Resolution 172.
Now you gotta vote on the actual 171.
On what?
Now you gotta vote on. That was just the amendment. Now you gotta vote on 171.
Oh, okay. Now we're gonna vote on 172 as amended,
171.
or 171. We're voting on resolution 171 as amended. Pardon? Supervisor Norton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question is for Mr. Collier. When I was at the Personal and Finance Committee meeting, Supervisor Singstock asked if there's an appeal process, and you said no, and I just asked him now. He said there's not an appeal process, but a grievance process for this. And could you explain that? And is that grievance process available for all employees, or is it just for the union employees?
Well, there is not a formal appeal process built into this plan that you're voting on. I think there may have been a misunderstanding with Supervisor Sengstock and I in that there is not a grievance process that would apply to the pay increases or the performance evaluations. There is a grievance process that the board adopted a year and a half ago in light of Act 10, or as required by Act 10, but that replaces the union grievance process, but it does apply to all employees, but it does not apply to issues such as the pay increases. It applies just to disciplinary actions, employee terminations, or health and safety issues.
Supervisor Rule.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As long as at the mic. I have a question for you. If we don't do anything this evening on this topic, no matter what happens given to the people that are at the max of their range right now? Assuming that there's some sort of an increase.
Well, it depends on
Are we
whether,
getting an increase or not getting an increase?
the board would have to change,
No, no, no.
I'm
We're
sorry.
not changing anything.
Yeah.
We're not gonna change anything. Do they get an increase?
If no action is taken by the board,
Correct.
including passing this tonight, or I'm not sure I understand your question, I'm sorry.
We're not passing this tonight.
Yeah.
It's October of 2015, and we're voting on the budget. And we're saying, whatever for a pay increase. Do the people at the max get an increase?
Across the board.
The last time we didn't across the board, I specifically put in the resolution that it would also change the maximum in order so that they would get an increase. So if we wrote the resolution that way, they'd get the increase, but if you only said across the board, but the maximum doesn't change, they would not get the increase.
Right. So if we didn't say that, and it was just a across-the-board increase, the people at the max would not get an increase.
Correct.
But now we're gonna give them a bonus. Come on, folks. I urge you to vote no.
We're voting on the amended. We're voting on the amended resolution. Alternate one that, with Tom's amendment. Okay, you want to read it back again?
Read his amendment back? That's already passed now.
Huh?
That's already passed, so now you're just voting on 171.
As amended.
Alternate one as amended.
Okay, does everybody understand what we're voting on? We're voting on resolution 171 as amended with alternate one
And Tom's amendment.
and Tom's amendment.
You ready to vote? No, Tom wants to talk.
I didn't think his amendment passed.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
Supervisor Widener.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To keep us from going on all night, the purpose of going to a merit plan is the person at the top of the level would get an increase. If they get a merit increase, it would be in the form of a bonus. It's not a situation they would not get an increase. So throwing out something like that, we're talking about a merit plan, which a lot of people have been in favor of, and we're saying we have a true merit plan here with the two amendments. And to go back and say that someone is not getting an increase, that's not correct. They wouldn't get an increase if they didn't get a merit increase. That is correct. That's the whole purpose of a merit plan. We're at the plan of saying that we'll have a merit increase across the board, and we'll have, if someone's at the top of their level and they get a merit increase, they would get it in the form of a bonus as opposed to an increase in their salary. But they would get an increase in either case if they get a merit increase. And that's the whole point of amendment number 1, was to change everything to a merit increase. And to turn around now and say, gee, we don't think we should have a merit increase, we should not have passed the amendment. To come in now, we're at the point now of saying, should we approve this plan? And I would say yes. The people have said we want to amend it, and I think we want to move it right along. We don't want to sit back and say, no, we will start all over. You talked about the 8 months that we worked on it. Send it back, vote no, and we work on another 8 months, right? Thank you.
We're ready to vote. That is passed. Resolution 172 5/2015. Create section 4.6 of the rules of Winnebago County Board of Supervisors. Supervisor Norton.
Move for adoption of 172-52015. As some of you know, this issue has been a concern of mine for many years. A few years ago, I tried to amend the rules then. I got tripped up because at that time I said you could not make any amendments on the night to be voted. So fast forward to last year's budget process, which has led me to why I've presented now. On the budget, when we did vote on either the amendments or to the final consideration of the budget, I think 8 members, almost a quarter of the board was not there. And I think that when I thought about this, I've looked at many different ways how counties do it. Some counties present the budget one month and vote on it the next month. And I thought that the simplest change would be to have voting take place on any matter, on amendments or final consideration of the
Okay,
budget.
first of all, there's been no second. Is that it?
Yeah.
There was? Okay. They were telling me there wasn't. Okay, go ahead.
So I contacted Mr. Bodner and I said, what can we do to make voting start at 6 o'clock, the same as all the other business meetings that we have? And then he suggested that to have my rule change, if it was independent, to have any teeth or any meaning and spirit, that I should have ending time. And that's why, or how I drive at the ending time of 11:59 p.m. Now, the ending time is not, I can change, earlier, 10:11. I just picked that because that would be the end of the day. I think this would give the maximum participation, not just for us, the county board supervisors, because it would be conducting the budget and the business of voting on the budget amendments or final consideration just as any other business meeting that happens past 6 p.m. on the third Tuesday of every month mostly, but also would give the public more opportunity to comment on the budget, and also more possibly, could even have input on the possible amendments. The one thing that I heard from the 4 people from the Judiciary Committee who were against it is, well, when you sign up and you run for this board, you know the times of the meetings and such and such. Well, and I'm going to point out to them, and I'll point to you, that Rule 17.0 says that any meeting is tentatively scheduled, the time and the date. I think it's about time that we do what most municipalities, whether it's county, city, town, village, do in the budget process, and have it in the evening, which would give, I believe, a maximum participation from anyone concerned, both those on the board and those in the public. And that's why I support this and I urge this change, because I think the biggest decision should not be when the budget takes place or how long it takes to do the budget, but what's actually in the budget. And I think this does this by giving an ideal to the whole board of when we're going to actually vote, and the public, when we're going to vote on the amendments and the budget itself.
Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight's meeting has certainly been strident, heated, passionate. That's good. But we're a team. Let's change the tone. I respect Supervisor Norton a great deal. I appreciate the fact that he has an idea he thinks is a good one. He came to our committee. We didn't see eye to eye on that. We disagree, I think, on the process. The Judiciary Committee is assigned the task of writing the rules for consideration by this body. This body either approves or disapproves those rules. Our goal this year is to ask you, we want your ideas. We will listen to your ideas. We'll listen to everybody, everybody. This is not the right time, however, to change a rule for the budget session coming up this October. We already passed the rules. We have a book out there the public has, I have, you have. that lists the time for the budget session this year. Some of us plan our year, and I've got this plan. However, like I said, we need to listen to you. I do not believe in the, well, we've always done it that way, therefore we have to do it. I don't believe that at all. Where Mr. Norton and I probably disagree on is, again, I said the timing. But there's a way to fix this for everybody, and that is, please allow our committee to do its work. We will reach out to everybody on this board, and we will seek your ideas for rule changes across the board. If the budget process needs to be changed, we can. I have some suggestions to change it, to make it better, but I'm not going to try to impose them on you now. But we have talked about this before as part of our process. We are going to have you give us your ideas, like I said, across the board. We're going to have a session in the evening if you want to come and talk to us about rule changes. We'll listen to you and we'll discuss it. But for now, our committee needs your support. We ask for your trust so that we can do the job that we were assigned. We are, like I said, assigned with this task. All of us take it very seriously. And again, we ask for your trust and allow us to do our job. There's a misstatement on this resolution that I have to point out with respect. There was no vote taken. There was no vote taken at all. That's the only thing that I get upset about. It's misrepresenting what happened at that meeting. And again, I want to change the tone, so I'm not going to use a word that I could use, but let's just get together. We're a team. Let's let the committee do its work, and all will be well. Thank you.
Supervisor Keller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support the resolution that the budget and the amendment should be voted at an evening meeting. Supervisor Wingren he doesn't seem to indicate that he doesn't like the resolution. It just seems he doesn't like the timing that's coming before the board. I don't know that the timing matters that much. During the budget meetings held last October, there were a number of amendments that lost due to tie votes. There were 8 to 10 supervisors excused depending upon the time of day. That's like Supervisor Norton said, a quarter of the supervisors were not there. That is the fact that there are 8 to 10 districts are not being represented on the most important legislative decisions, and that is the allocation of funding. Why there were 8 to 10 supervisors missing, I don't know. It may have been due to jobs or other commitments. At some point in time, this board must have decided to hold all full county board meetings in the evening. I can only assume that this is to allow maximum attendance. I do not understand why the scheduling of the most important votes disregards that premise. The next point I wish to make is that the fourth role of the board's own mission statement is, quote, to encourage citizens' awareness, participation, and involvement in county government, end quote. If we pass this rule, we will be following our own stated role of encouraging public participation. The public could attend or view the day's sessions, hear the executive's comments, the staff's comments, as well as the comments and questions made by supervisors. We could even publish the proposed amendments online for the public to view. We could vote on them. They, the public, as well as supervisors, would or could be better prepared to attend an evening sessions and make convincing observations during open public comments. We will be doing, as Supervisor Kyle said in an email, maximizing participation in the most significant meetings of our legislative year. During the 2014 budget session, the October 2014 budget session, there were amendments that may have generated some public input. They are, number one, the county employee wage resolution. There are 6 motions, and at least one of the votes ended in a tie, 14-14. The second one, the Parks and Recreation Amendment vote was 14-13, and that was after reconsideration. The third one, the Contingency Fund reduction vote was 14-14. These important issues were all decided by close votes. 1/4 of the board members were excused. If the votes were taken at the evening meeting with a presumed larger representation, it may have taken only one vote to change the outcome. My last points are taken from the Government Finance Officers Association website. The Government Finance Officers Association recommends that governments incorporate public participation efforts in planning, budgeting, and performance management. The Government Finance Officers Association recommends hold meetings at various times to provide maximum participation. I think this is a good rule change. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do appreciate Supervisor Norton coming up with alternatives and for rules, but any supervisor reserves the right to come directly to the board and not have to go to a committee, and that's his choice. It's my perspective that the budget responsibility of the supervisor employees of Winnebago County is perhaps one of the most important things that they have to do in representing their constituency. That means it's important for them to be there at the meeting, each budget session. There is a notice in the board rules 2 years in advance of budget sessions. So it is inexcusable for any supervisor to make an excuse for not being there unless it's a health or it's a personal family situation. Every supervisor is an employee. They are absent without leave. It's their duty to take vacation from their primary employment to fulfill their responsibility as a county board supervisor, because we're the employer as well. As a matter of fact, to make a rule, it might be a suggested rule that the rules be modified to provide a fine for those supervisors who fail to attend budget sessions. That makes a lot of sense to me. But the bottom line is, if the public wants to chime in on the budget, our initial budget session is on a Monday night. It starts at 6 o'clock. So any person who can't make it, the general public can't make it during the day, can come to the budget session and speak and address in a public hearing what they have to say and about what sections of the budget. If they really want to communicate with their supervisor from their district, they can discuss an issue that they may have and how that supervisor may, even though they may not personally approve that perspective, they can bring that individual's perspective before the board, and it can be considered by the other supervisors who may be sympathetic with that particular perspective. So I think that this is a resolution which I would urge be defeated.
Supervisor Keel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In a way, Supervisor Eisen, I would like to thank him for providing me an unbelievable amount of low-hanging fruit with which to go through a machete I don't have with me. Mr. Eisen, with due respect, your last comment has beclowned this institution. It is feeding into every single stereotype. I have heard about the county board and about other offices that if I want to arrange my job that I happen to have a contract in around the club schedule, I have all the opportunity for 2 years to look at that date. Mr. Eisen, I would like to serve on this board. I am not an employee of the Winnebago County. 651 people voted for me. If they want to toss me out next time, they can. So please check on the status of why you are here. If somebody takes out papers in your district, Mr. Eisen, and they get more votes than you, that is all that matters. Now, referring to your other idea, I am a contracted employee of a school district. I work 190 days a year, and from what I've heard, I have a lot of time on my hands in summer, and that's a fair statement. I get one personal day that I don't have to tell anybody, and I usually save that for taking a kid to the doctor. For you to say that somebody like me is going to be AWOL from the 651 people that voted for me because you think I should be here for something this body could decide to meet here. I'll remind you why we are here tonight. Because the rules state that there's a better way to maximize civic participation. And perhaps somebody needs to take out papers in that district because the attitudes that make this institution sometimes seem silly are on display tonight. And I'm not one to go around and say I'm offended at every little aggression or whatever, but I tell you what, for you to not only say that this is not the time to do it or that's a silly idea, and then to say somebody's got a moral problem for missing a meeting of the budget, and then to suggest a fine, I mean, that is good. I suggest you write for The Onion. Now that's mean of me. I apologize to withdraw that comment. I respect Mr. Wingren's comments, and I look forward to meeting with him on some of the timing, and that's fine. I support still, I think we could change it, and reasonable people can agree to that one thing or another. So Mr. Wingren, I hear your comments, and I love to talk about that. I still support it because I think more or less I examined the minutes from that this week, from what happened in October, and there was a good amount of items from Mr. Harris and presentations that happened during the day. I listened to those on YouTube when I was working at night when I wasn't here, but I found out what happened. What I like about Supervisor Norton's resolution is it doesn't say we can't do anything during the day. It just, the most important stuff, which boiled down to about 5.5 hours, I'm going on the clerk's notes, but I think that could be chopped up and done in a couple evening sessions. So if you'll please excuse my earlier comments, I think the structure allows for a good deal of freedom, and I would urge that we adopt that with the note, again, that I respect Mr. Wingren's comments.
Supervisor Finch.
I don't even know if I want to talk now. Good job. Anyway, no, I'm supporting this also, mainly because out of all my years on the board, I've sat and watched where it came down to a vote or two, and that's mainly because we've had people that are still employed. They just can't get off work whenever they want. You know, you got different reasons why some people just can't make it. I mean, we got 9 people, one quarter of our board that's working. You know, so I don't think we want to discriminate against them. So therefore, I think Supervisor Norton has a good plan. By us going this way, everyone has that way of pushing for what they want in the budget. I mean, let's face it, that last day of the budget, how many resolutions do we go through to change this, to change that, eliminate this? And a good example, last budget was a tie vote, the one vote for the parks, for a dog park against, and there was a tied one of the two. But anyway, Supervisor Barker had to leave. It was brought back up, and it got defeated. Now, if the whole county board would have been here, it still may have been defeated, but at least the whole board had that right to vote on it. So I'm going to support Supervisor Norton's resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the spirit of no politics, bipartisan environment, and also in light of the steaming pant load that we heard from Supervisor Eisen, I have to support this as well. I think the founding of this country was from people who were citizen delegates. They were citizen representatives. They were not the political elite. They were not full-time politicians. I'm sure some were retired or were very well off and had other people delegated to do their business. Some others may have had a lot of other people to do the work on their respective properties or businesses. In light of those people who are not present during the budget meeting, I'm sure some of those people, Mr. Keel perhaps specifically, would participate fully. There are some members of this board I suggest would not truly participate even if they could be here. But at the same time, I can't play politics with this one. When Mr. Norton left the Judiciary Committee meeting this last week, I stood up and shook his hand because I agreed with what he had to say. So I have to support this.
Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I started out by saying we needed to change the tone. I am ashamed that a member of our committee broke what we as a board adopted, the rule of civility. On behalf of myself, I apologize to Mr. Keel. Does not represent the mindset of our committee or the other members on it. I am ashamed. That does not bode well for our board, whether we meet in the morning, noon, night, or on weekends, to have that attitude. We're a team. We respect each other. So I'm very sorry that that had to be said. It did not have to be said.
Supervisor Roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I only have one comment. When this resolution was introduced, it was said that public input could be given on amendments. I sat in the gallery for 2 years before I decided whether or not to run for this board. I never was allowed the opportunity to go to either of those mics and talk about an amendment at a budget session. And I don't think that's going to change, is it, Mr. Chairman? Well, if it does, it'll be a huge change, because people, even at the meeting tonight, were allowed to speak before any of this took place. Once we talked about the wage, not the wage study, the merit plan and so forth, there could have been 30 people back there, but they couldn't have spoken. I don't think that's right. But by the same token, at a budget session, whether it's at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 8 o'clock at night, they are not going to be, they're not going to be allowed to talk about amendments. Next, I have a parliamentary inquiry. I'm curious if corporate counsel or somebody could tell me why on line 24 the word present is there. It says vote required for passage, 2/3 of members present.
That's in your rules.
Is it present or 2/3 of the membership?
No, it's 2/3 of those present. It was, a long time ago, it was 2/3 of membership, but the board changed the rule to 2/3 of those present.
Could you cite that for me, please?
Well, you'll have to let me go back and find it.
Well, somebody's got a book.
But that's,
I don't have my book with me tonight, I'm sorry.
It's 2/3 of those present.
Is that right? Okay, thank you. Take your word for it.
That's it?
Thank you.
Supervisor Keller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to point out that at the beginning of most every meeting that we have at the county board and any other government board or committee meeting, there is an open session for public comment. And as I said before, if we did discussions during the day and we went through the budget during the day with the staff and the county exec and everybody, and people were interested and watched it on TV or attended, and then we followed up with an evening meeting when we actually did voting on amendments, and we actually published the amendments ahead of time, people at the beginning of the meeting, before we voted, would have a chance to speak, and they would have some knowledge about what was coming forth. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Norton?
Thank you. I just want to kind of add and maybe answer Mr. Roll, Supervisor Roll's question or comment as I perceive it, and why I think public have more able to have input on amendments or the budget in general. I'm going to live last year's example. I believe last year County Executive Harris wrapped up his presentation of the budget approximately 11:15, 11:20, and I believe at that time the chairman said, do you want to come back tomorrow or do you want to continue on? And I believe that was the same in all the years I've been here, is that we've gone pretty quickly from the presentation to the amendments. And you didn't have a chance to speak on the amendments because we didn't have what Supervisor Keller just said, where we would have a different session, another session, action on the budget, whatever you want to call it, where those amendments would be printed and be on the side you could look at, and then at the beginning of that nighttime, evening budget session, we would take action on the amendments and final consideration. Anyone in the public could comment on those amendments or the budget in general. And like I say, it's a change from the previous, every year I've been here, I think it's pretty much, we've ended the presentation on the budget, and very quickly, we've gone to the amendments. That would change under this amendment. You'd have, this rule change, it would be a separate session.
Supervisor Keel?
Mr. Chairman, in light of Mr. Wingren's words, let me truly apologize for raising my voice at the last comment I made. The comments I made, I stand by, and I admit I let myself get a little animated as to what they meant for how I serve my district and what we're able to do. So let me look in the eye. I apologize for raising my voice in that manner.
Supervisor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to go back. I was going to refer to one or two of you that talked about the public being able to talk about amendments. And now it's said that they would be available to them. And that would be a change too. So I guess.
Okay,
I
just
have
let
the
him
floor.
finish
I'm sorry.
talking.
I'm sorry, I have the floor, but you said that the amendments would be available for people to see, and that would be a change along with this. It's not in the amendment that that's going to happen, or in the resolution that that's going to happen. So I would doubt that that's going to happen.
Supervisor Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I only have one concern. I won't say I'm against it or for it. I guess we'll know when we vote. But my concern is if we go ahead and have these meetings in the daytime, do all this discussion, all this and that, then all of a sudden we come back at night to do the voting and that, are we going to have more discussion again on it? Are we going to be going over it again? Say, Supervisor Keel wasn't here today when we started it. Now he's here tonight. Are we going to start all over and go again? That's my only thing, if we have some in the day and some at night. Because if it would have happened like it did tonight, we'd be here for weeks. Thank you.
Well, you've talked quite a bit, but go ahead.
Sorry, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just, on that thought, I looked at the minutes and I just understood a lot of daytime things that went on where Mr. Harris's presentations and things like that you can get online.
Okay, Supervisor Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief. But first, I got to say, there's a lot of passion in the room tonight. But I guess I'll give one comment because there's a silver lining to that. The bottom line is that passion, whether it was one way or another tonight, it means that people in this room care. And they care about what we're doing here. And so, if nothing else, comments said one way or another, I think that shows that folks care about what we're doing, and there's a lot of value to that. But just wanted to add in regards to this resolution, I think it's worthwhile, and I actually think it's very well written. The actual line 4.6, where it specifically says all proposed changes to the annual budget as well as final consideration shall be between 6 and midnight. I think that's very well worded. Because what it's really saying is that we're allowing maximum public access for the times when we're potentially going to do changes and adopt it. But it still potentially gives flexibility for this board to determine how else it goes about its budget. Now, whether that means in the future that all parts of the budget process would be between 6 and midnight, or some of it would be before 6, but the adoption and changes would be afterward. The bottom line is, I think what it does is when we make the changes and we make the adoption, it allows for the greater majority of the public to be available at that time. And I do think that's valuable and a step forward for this board. So I'd urge you to support it. I think it's well crafted and well intended, and I think it's the right approach for us. Thank you.
Okay, we'll vote by our iPad. Vote aye if you approve, no if you disapprove. And it failed. Resolution 173-5, 2015, amend section 5.04, parent 2 of the General Code of Winnebago County's coroner's cremation permit fee. Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move approval of Resolution 173-5, 2015. It's kind of ironic that the coroner is the ending of the meeting. You might have more business after this. Some of us complain, or what is it? Was it seconded? Okay. Some people had a problem when we had to fill a hole in the coroner's budget, and many hours ago when Mr. See, what's your name again? Our coroner. Our county executive explained all the technicalities here, so it's a simple, either you favor it or you don't. You know.
Supervisor Farley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My opinion, I want to appreciate the comments of the coroner prior to the meeting. He did his best to explain the need for this. However, I think that increase is quite excessive. We all have a copy of the fiscal impact that was printed out by Mr. Orenstein. In that document, it indicates that the state will probably be reducing the amount of funds that would be available by about $20,000. So that would be your lost revenue. I suggest that we increase the permit to cover that $20,000, which would mean you won't have a loss to the county. Raising it beyond that is quite excessive. So I'll move to amend line 25 to read a fee of $170 is hereby established for the viewing of a body by the coroner, etc.
Okay, it was moved and seconded.
Thank you. If I might ask, Mr. Chairman, Chuck, I assume you would agree 170 would cover the $20,000 lapse? That was my math.
That sounds about right.
Thank you. And the intent here, once again, is to cover the proposed lapse that if the legislature amends the law and it is approved by the governor, we would not have to absorb that loss. It would be covered by the permit fee increase. Thank you.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Well, your light went on as we were voting. Yeah, it went on as we were voting. No, Paul, we were voting and then your light popped up. I'm sorry.
I'm on the board, you can't vote.
I don't know what you're saying.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn. He said aye.
We voted on the amendment to his $175.
I withdraw that.
I didn't,
Call for any names.
huh?
You said all in favor, you didn't call for any names, I don't think. Yeah.
You're voting on the resolution as amended.
Okay, so we should vote by our iPad?
I got it here.
Okay, we'll vote by our iPad. You're voting on the $175 amendment by Mr. Farley.
170.
170?
170.
It has been a year. How come there we go.
That is passed. Now we'll vote on the amended $175, 170. That is passed.
Motion to adjourn?
Supervisor Roble.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move that we will adjourn until Tuesday, June 16th at 6 p.m. Business meeting.
We're adjourned.
Second.